Chapter 333. Hearing Yan Zhaoge's words, Elder Meng's expression changed slightly. You mean, now, we are verifying some things in preparation for what comes next. Yan Zhaoge said, in my eyes, there actually isn't a fifth, sixth, or seventh extreme bout. What I see is a complete competition. The start, the first half, the second half, and even the final result. Hearing his words, Elder Meng nodded lightly, no longer saying anything. Currently, within the moonlight world, Feng Yunsheng and Fan Qiu were in a great battle, both sides virtually suffering heavy losses. Having won a Pyrrhic victory, Feng Yunsheng had expended too much of her energy, unable to continue competing with Meng Wan. However, Feng Yunsheng still forcibly held on, battling with Meng Wan. Finally, the weakened heavenly dragon went dormant once more. In contrast, after having been defeated in the fourth extreme bout, Meng Wan returned as a monarch once more, the phoenix dancing amongst the nine heavens. After having been battered beneath Broad Creed Mountain, having suffered heavy losses, the Sacred Sun clan finally regained some ground on another battlefield. Having lost the Great Sun Heaven Measuring Ruler and regained the Extreme Crown because the east-coming Marshal Saint Huang Guanlia was unable to wield the Extreme Crown, the Sacred Sun clan's overall strength was still somewhat inferior to when Huang Guanlia had left seclusion and stepped onto Broad Creed Mountain. However, with a sacred artifact in hand, the Sacred Sun clan's back could finally stand up a little straighter, stopping their earlier decline as they had the capital to reconsider how to reclaim their lost territory. Looking at that pure white crown that resembled a bright moon descending from the heavens, slowly descending onto Meng Wan's head, Yan Zhaoge could not help but narrow his eyes slightly. Feng Yunsheng returned to Broad Creed Mountain's side, her face still very pale, but her expression calm. Just that flame seemed to be leaping within her gaze. Gazing back, the fiery light within Feng Yunsheng's pupils was not directed at Meng Wan, instead being directed at that slowly descending white crown. As the others praised Meng Wan's strength, their gazes towards Feng Yunsheng were also filled with emotion. Feng Yunsheng could also be considered to have shocked the world with a single feat in her first extreme bout. She had already surpassed all the other maidens of extreme aside from Meng Wan. Whether it was the veteran expert Jade Sea City's Chen Sutting, who had once won the second extreme bout, Turbid Wave Pavilion's Fan Qiu, who had shocked the world with a single brilliant feat last year, obtaining the final victory in her first competition, or the ambitious work of the Sacred Sun clan this time, the powerful newcomer Yun Xiuqing. Facing Feng Yunsheng, they were all submissive. This was especially so for Fan Qiu. In the past year, it had always been her who had been in charge of the Extreme Crown. With its help, she had improved rapidly, being a strong contender for first place in this year's fifth Extreme bout. Still, she had still been defeated by Feng Yunsheng in the end. From the first round of the competition and the second round of the competition, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that in terms of pure foundation, Fan Qiu was even slightly superior. However, in terms of actual combat, Feng Yunsheng was superior. While the exact enmity between Feng Yunsheng and the Sacred Sun clan was limited to others, thanks to Lin Zhou and the Heavenly Thunder Hall, a considerable portion of people knew about it. Feng Yunsheng's extreme physique had once suffered a problem, only beginning to recover after the third extreme bout with the help of the Yang Cloud Spring of the Mountain Domain's Cloud Portent Mountain. Starting afresh, having achieved such results in just 2 years at most, it was really shocking. Everyone could not help but think, if Feng Yunsheng was given a little more time, if she had started at the same starting line as Meng Wan, Chen Sutting, and the others, what heights would she have been able to reach? Could Meng Wan's near-invincible dominance in the extreme bouts still be the same as it was now? At this moment, while Meng Wan had finally emerged victorious, even the expressions of those of the Sacred Sun clan were somewhat solemn. Feng Yunsheng returned to Yan Zhaoge's side, who asked, how much? The question sounded a little out of the blue, but Feng Yunsheng clearly knew what Yin Zhaoge meant as she answered softly, "My body is weak, and I was able to persevere for a shorter period of time. I can only give a rough estimate. Little Wan is currently around 77 to 82%. Yin Zhaoge raised his head slightly, pondering, that can basically be counted as 80%, or for safety's sake, the lowest 77%. He lowered his head, looking at Feng Yunsheng, "Just me watching from the side, or you watching from the side, won't be of any use. You have to personally clash with her. Now that you have already clashed with her, using the extreme Yin scripture to derive it, do you have confidence in breaking Meng Wan's supreme extreme Yin arts?" Feng Yunsheng pondered seriously for a moment before saying, "Under the current situation, I am less than 50% confident. A year later, after my strength has increased again, and I have also perfected my supreme extreme Yin arts, I will have confidence." Yin Zhaoge smiled slightly. "A year later, Meng Wan will also have improved, and at the same time, she may also have comprehended an even more powerful supreme extreme Yin arts. However, even if she has a new move, it will also be of the same lineage as her previous moves, with traces to be found. Your chances will still be very high. Do you still remember what I said to you earlier? Right now, it is only the first half, and can even only be counted as the preparatory phase before the official start." Feng Yunsheng nodded. "Rest easy, I understand." Glancing back at the extreme Yin crown on Meng Wan's head again, she sighed softly. Yin Zhaoge similarly stared at the extreme Yin crown on Meng Wan's head, his gaze sweeping across the people of the Sacred Sun clan as he thought, after all the preparations have been completed, it should be time to make a trip to the extreme northern lands. I hope that the actual situation is the same as my predictions. That way, I can first send you a gift, taking it as a return gift for attacking my Broad Creed Mountain, as well as a congratulatory gift for today. The curtains fell on the 6th extreme Yin bout. On this day every year, it was destined that some would be happy while others would be sad. This year was naturally no exception. Amidst joy, the Sacred Sun clan could also heave a sigh of relief, their sharpness that had been thwarted by Broad Creed Mountain earlier flourishing once more. Broad Creed Mountain, Jade Sea City, and Infinite Boundless Mountain would inevitably have to sort out their own strategies in response to the rise in strength of the Sacred Sun clan. Turbid Wave Pavilion was comparatively calm, but more or less also felt a little down. The one with the most complicated feelings would probably be the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Facing the pressure of Broad Creed Mountain's 3 clans, the increase in strength of their allies meant that the strength of their own clan had also increased. The Heavenly Thunder Hall also had some breathing room. However, while their originally already powerful allies had become even more powerful, the strength of the Heavenly Thunder Hall itself had not increased. This inevitably caused the entire Heavenly Thunder Hall to feel worried. What was even more worrying was that while their maiden of extreme Yin had grown in strength, her opponents were even fiercer. Those who had been powerful in the past were still powerful this year, even becoming even more powerful. And the newcomers who had appeared this year were even more dazzling. While they were improving, so were their opponents. However, the speed of their improvement was even faster than their own. From another perspective, that was equivalent to them having regressed. The hope before them thus grew more and more remote, to the point that all of the Heavenly Thunder Hall vaguely felt that there was no hope for the extreme Yin bout. How the Heavenly Thunder Hall felt frustrated and defeated was not within the scope of Yin Zhaoge's concern. What he was concerned about was whether the local snake, that was the Heavenly Thunder Hall, would interfere with his journey north. With this year's extreme Yin bout having ended, he had already done all that he had to do. Now it was time for him to hurry over to the East Sea. Some of the things that he needed had gradually been gathered and prepared. Now, it was time for him to head north. The method to revive Shi Jun and his mother, the legacy of the glacial dragon martial saint, as well as the gift he had prepared for the Sacred Sun clan, were all there. To be continued. Chapter 334. After the extreme Yin bout, Elder Meng brought Feng Yinsheng back to the Heaven Domain's broad Creed Mountain, while Yen Zhaoge traveled alongside the martial practitioners of Jade Sea City, heading to the water domain together. Some of the things that had been arranged and prepared before were gradually completed. Only 2 or 3 things were still being prepared. Yen Zhaoge first headed to the water domain. After making all the necessary preparations there, he traversed the East Sea and the North Sea by sea, heading to the extreme northern lands. There were still people waiting for him in the East Sea. A newly entered maiden of extreme Yin had already been kept by Fu Enshu's side, at the same time awaiting Yen Zhaoge's evaluation, as well as a tailor-made grooming plan for her. When Yen Zhaoge arrived at the water domain, the one who received him became the Seven Seas' young master, Song Chao. Now that the two could be considered to be extremely familiar with each other, seeing him, Yen Zhaoge smiled. "Senior apprentice brother Song, I have disturbed you." Song Chao also smiled. "No need to stand on ceremony, junior apprentice brother Yen." After bidding farewell to Chen Sutting and the others, the two headed for the outer East Sea. Along the way, they passed by the scenery of the Sea Kingdom, causing Yen Zhaoge to click his tongue in admiration. In terms of pure domain area of the 8 extremities world sky, earth, wind, thunder, water, fire, mountain, and lake, the water domain was the largest. However, more than half of the water area was the sea. According to custom, the Heaven Territory was divided into 5 continents. The Fire Territory was also divided into 5 continents. The Wind Territory was divided into 4 continents, and the Thunder Territory was divided into 6 continents. The Mountain Region was divided into 4 large mountain ranges within its borders. Each large region was called a territory, so there were 4 territories. The divisions of the lake region were called daos. The 6 daos of the lake region were also known as the 6 daos of the north and south. The water domain was the most special because most cities were built on islands. The ruler of the sacred ground, Jade Sea City, was also named after the city. Therefore, the city was used as the division of regions. It was a region that revolved around a city on land or a city on a huge island in the sea. Its influence and control radiated to the surrounding area. There were 9 such cities in the water domain, collectively known as the 9 cities of the water domain. Of these, there were 3 on land and 6 on the sea, 1 each in the inner North Sea and the inner South Sea, and 4 including Jade Sea City in the inner East Sea. There was an island where one of the 9 cities of the water domain was located. Although it was called an island, it was actually very large, like a small continent. "Junior apprentice brother, Yen, you are going to the East Sea to meet the Flame Devils," Song Chao said as he walked. "While the 6 great sacred grounds have each sent their experts to guard the outer East Sea and slay the Flame Devils together, there would still occasionally be fish that slipped through the net. While they would all be killed, afterwards, they would still cause great damage within a short period of time." In coming to the East Sea this time, Yen Zhaoge had nominally been to meet the Flame Devils. Hearing his words now, he nodded. "Many thanks for Senior Apprentice Brother Song's reminder. Before coming, I already had some understanding of this situation, and will be careful." Song Chao said, "It's good that you are aware of this." Speaking of this, it was fortunate that the descent of the 9 underworlds was stopped and the decimating abyss was purged as well. Otherwise, our 8 extremities world would inevitably be attacked from both sides. Yen Zhaoge swiveled his head to look in the direction of the inland to the west. While the decimating abyss has been exterminated, the 9 underworlds still have to be guarded against. While the first hand that extended and has been severed, the 9 underworld's evil devils are accustomed to bewitching people's hearts, finding the weak points and loopholes in people's hearts. Their ability to infiltrate and corrode is too great, making it hard to guard against. Song Chao sighed. That's right, he escorted Yin Zhaoge all the way, even staying within the boundaries of the water domain of the inner East Sea, all the way to the outer East Sea where he met up with Fu Wenxu, only taking his leave after exchanging greetings with her. After Song Chao had left, Fu Wenxu swiveled her head to look at Yin Zhaoge. I have already heard of the results of the extreme Yin bout. How was the process? Did we achieve our target? Yin Zhaoge nodded. We basically achieved our target. Fu Wenxu said, That's good then. Since you have arrived, wait here for a moment. I will call Lu Hua over for you to check. Yin Lu Hua was that maiden of extreme Yin that the previous first seat elder of the East Si Changzheng had discovered. Very quickly, she appeared before Yin Zhaoge and Fu Wenxu. She looked to be around 17 or 18 years of age, and was still in the body refinement realm. She had previously been a solitary practitioner, learning from her master. Her master had some level of attainment, but had perished at the hands of the flame devils a few days ago. Yin Lu Hua was rather tall amongst women, her looks also rather decent. Looking at Yin Zhaoge now, she bowed respectfully. Yin Zhaoge's fame had spread far and wide in recent years, with rumors spreading even far away on the East Sea. While she did not understand the specifics before entering Broad Creed Mountain, she had already heard of this senior apprentice brother's great name. After she had entered the clan, while Fu Wenxu had not mentioned it, there had been other Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners stationed at the East Sea who had reminded her that while the Yin Zhaoge before her was young, his authority in the clan was on the same level as Fu Wenxu's. It was even to the extent that in some areas, Yin Zhaoge's authority was even greater than Fu Wenxu's. Yin Zhaoge, who had rendered great merit time and time again with his current age and cultivation base, had already reached the point where he could no longer be rewarded in the clan. After the great tribulation of Broad Creed Mountain, Yin Zhaoge, who had rendered great merit, once more set a precedent for Broad Creed Mountain's lineage, being allowed to freely enter and exit the 4th level of the martial repository. This was something that had never happened before in the history of Broad Creed Mountain's lineage. Before Yin Zhaoge, only the chief and the first seat elder of the martial repository could freely enter and exit the 4th level of the martial repository. Other than former chief like Yuan Zhengfeng, who had stepped down from the position of chief, even the grand elders who wanted to enter the 4th level of the martial repository were not able to do so just because they wanted to. There were some details that Yin Lu Hua was still unable to come into contact with now. Even if she knew about it, without having personally witnessed it, without having personally experienced it, it would be very hard for her to understand how Yin Zhaoge had been able to ascend to such a high position at such a young age as a martial grandmaster. However, this did not prevent her from realizing Yin Zhaoge's weight. Moreover, even if she could not realize how extraordinary Yin Zhaoge was, she also knew that his father, Yin Di, had already officially taken over the position of chief of Broad Creed Mountain. Yin Zhaoge appraised Yin Lu Hua for a moment, his gaze finally falling on her wrist. Yin Lu Hua instantly felt as though Yin Zhaoge's gaze was tangible as it rested on her wrist, diagnosing her pulse and probing the condition of her body. After a while, Yin Zhaoge retracted his gaze, saying to Fu Wenxu, "Your foundation in extreme Yin power is not bad and can be nurtured. However, your current cultivation base is a little on the low side. Having started too late, it would be very hard for you to catch up to the others." While last year's fan show of Turbid Wave Pavilion and this year's Yun Xiuqing of the Sacred Sun Clan only participated in the 4th and 5th extreme Yin bouts respectively, Turbid Wave Pavilion and the Sacred Sun Clan have actually already been grooming them for a very long time. Definitely not just a short 1 or 2 years. Fan Xiao aside, the Sacred Sun clan's Yun Xiuqing, who just popped up this year, was probably discovered by the Sacred Sun clan not long after junior apprentice Sister Feng left the world illuminating peak. Afterwards, they began grooming her, with Meng Wan replacing junior apprentice Sister Feng and her filling in for Meng Wan. Chapter 335. Yan Zhaoge wasn't very clear on Yin Liuhua's talent in the martial Dao. It was just that, according to the words of Broad Creed Mountain's elder Changzheng, who had discovered her, Yin Liuhua's talent in the martial Dao was also very outstanding. Yan Zhaoge had also acknowledged that she possessed the power of extreme Yin after inspecting her. While there was still a gap between her and Fan Xiao and Meng Wan, it was still not bad, being on the same level as Chen Sutting, Nian Lei, and Ling Hui. This way, with Yan Zhaoge's various grooming methods, her innate deficiencies could be made up for later, and her final accomplishments would also not be low. However, the problem was that Yin Liuhua's current cultivation base was too low. While cultivation base was not the only deciding factor, it was also one of the most important factors affecting a maiden of extreme Yin's ability to communicate with the extreme Yin crown. Not speaking of anything else, even a maiden of extreme Yin would need to be at least a martial scholar before being able to communicate with the extreme Yin crown. While the power of extreme Yin was strong and the arts of extreme Yin were powerful, if one's cultivation base was too low, it would be very hard for them to compete with other maidens of extreme Yin. This was the case for the Sacred Sun clan's Yun Xiuqing. However, even Yun Xiuqing was already an outer aura martial scholar. Not to mention stepping into the Xiantian stage like Meng Wan and Chen Sutting, if Yun Xiuqing was a late outer aura martial scholar like Feng Yunsheng, Fan Xiao, and the others' victory or defeat aside, she would at least not have been beaten up by Feng Yunsheng and the others in the process. Meanwhile, Yin Liuhua before them was really a little too late to start now. It was impossible for the frontrunners to just stand where they were and wait for her to catch up as they all shot forward together. If time dragged on a little longer, with Yin Liuhua working hard, with the various methods and resources of Yan Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain constantly supporting her, whether or not she could defeat Meng Wan and Feng Yunsheng, there would still be hope for her to catch up to the others. However, that would require a rather long period of time. Currently, the situation in the Eight Extremities world was ever-changing. Even Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng often had the feeling that their plans would not be able to keep up with the changes, let alone Yin Liuhua's current situation. Fu Enshu said, while it will be difficult to catch up to Meng Wan and the others, it is not impossible. Didn't Yunsheng charge all the way to her current level in less than 3 years? Yan Zhaoge glanced at Yin Liuhua, saying, that being said, it is not easy. It will still have to depend on her. Fu Enshu said, Liuhua's talent in the martial Dao is still not bad. While her previous master also had some skill, he still held her back somewhat. Now that she has entered my Broad Creed Mountain, as long as she is willing to work hard, it is not impossible for her to advance by leaps and bounds, catching up to others. Moreover, Yunsheng's current condition is very good. Our clan can already see the dawn of hope in seizing the extreme Yin crown. If it's Liuhua being able to act as Yunsheng's assistant like that little girl surnamed Yun of the Sacred Sun clan this year, and raise their chances of victory, that would already be sufficient. Fu Enshu's words were said right in front of Yin Liuhua. She swiveled her head to look at her. If you can defeat Yunsheng, Liuhua, the heavy burden of our clan obtaining the extreme Yin crown will naturally fall on your shoulders. You started off late. If you have great ambitions, you will have to work harder, advancing bravely and resolutely. Looking first at Fu Enshu, then at Yan Zhaoge, Yin Liuhua hurriedly said, please give me some pointers, senior apprentice brother, Yan. Yan Zhaoge said calmly, our grooming plan for you will be completely the same as junior apprentice Sister Feng's. Logically speaking, having started off late, the intensity of your cultivation should be greater, only then being able to catch up to Junior Apprentice Sister Feng and the others. However, Junior Apprentice Sister Feng's cultivation intensity is already extremely high, often even surpassing the limits of what a human can bear. If we continue to raise it for you, you might not be able to bear it, Yen Zhaoge said. Therefore, we will temporarily do the same as Junior Apprentice Sister Feng did back then. After you have experienced it for yourself, if you feel that you can bear even more, we will then increase the amount at our discretion. Yin Lu Hua pursed her lips, suddenly feeling that entering broad Creed Mountain might not be as blissful as she had originally thought. However, she also had some of the pride of a youth, as she immediately said, "Rest easy, Senior Apprentice Brother Yen. I will definitely cultivate diligently." Yen Zhaoge nodded. Other than that, as a maiden of extreme Yin, you must pay attention to protecting yourself. It is fine within the clan, but when outside, you must be wary of others plotting against you. I believe that Senior Apprentice Aunt Fu should have already warned you about this. Fu Enshu said, "This is only natural." Yin Lu Hua hurriedly said, "Yes, Master has already warned me about this many times." The way she addressed Fu Enshu and how she was currently dressed in the white clothes of an ordinary disciple, when the longtime elders of the disciplinary hall heard of it, they would inevitably frown. Yen Zhaoge, however, didn't mind this too much. Having accepted Yin Lu Hua as a disciple, the clan had never treated her as an ordinary disciple from the start. Her joining Fu Enshu's lineage along with Feng Yunsheng was also something that could be foreseen. While she was currently dressed in white, following by Fu Enshu's side, enjoying the various resources of the clan as well as Fu Enshu's personal treasures, she was definitely not someone that ordinary disciples could compare to. This had nothing to do with fairness. Fairness lay in equal opportunities. However, with differences in conditions between people, if the clan wanted to produce peak talents, it would definitely work hard to make its experts stronger, rather than forcing them to be equal. Of course, enjoying more authority and gains would come with corresponding responsibilities. It was just that Yin Lu Hua herself shouldn't have the guts to address Fu Enshu like this now. It was most likely due to Fu Enshu's influence. Yen Zhaoge scratched his head a little at this rather unscrupulous senior apprentice aunt of his. Fu Enshu acted nonchalantly as she looked at Yen Zhaoge, asking, "Have you made any progress regarding the matter of little Jun, and his mother?" Yen Zhaoge answered, "In these next few days, the final things that I need should be in my hands. At that time, I will set off. However, as for how confident I am, I will still have to investigate the area before I can know." Fu Enshu sighed. Lightly, "You should keep this matter in mind. If there's anything you need, just tell me directly." At this moment, Fu Enshu's expression grew much more solemn. Yen Zhaoge nodded. "Rest easy, Senior Apprentice Aunt. I will do my best." In the following days, Yen Zhaoge temporarily stayed by Fu Enshu's side, assigning her homework according to her physical condition. Other than that, Yen Zhaoge also truly clashed with the flame devils that had infiltrated the outer East Sea. The source indeed lies with the flame devil emperor in pre-Great Calamity times. Yen Zhaoge gradually came to a realization, countless thoughts flashing through his mind as many thoughts surfaced. After a few days, all the things that Yen Zhaoge needed had been prepared. He then took his leave of Fu Enshu, setting off once more. Broad Creed Mountain had the East Sea's first seat Elder Zhang, sitting over here. While they definitely couldn't compare to the local snake, Jade, Sea City, they still had some understanding of the situation of the sea. Combining this information, Yen Zhaoge could easily determine the route to the north by sea. While the Great Sea was bumpy, Yen Zhaoge's route was rather special. Not only could the underground splitting shuttle traverse the earth, it could similarly traverse the deep sea like a fish. Yen Zhaoge rode the wind and broke the waves just like that, passing through the East Sea and heading towards the North Sea. To be continued. Chapter 336. Within the underground splitting shuttle, traversing the deep sea, Yen Zhaoge sat within, forming a hand seal with each hand, congregating them within his dantian. His entire body's aura qi circulated, becoming more and more vigorous and heavy as it unceasingly circulated within his body. The flow of qi that resembled chaos gradually became more and more turbid, heavier and heavier, heavy like the great earth, able to bear all things, nurture all things. The first level of the martial Grandmaster realm, the early spirit vessel stage, was unique in transforming one's body's abundant spiritual qi, or a qi that had returned to simplicity, into a soil-like existence. The soil that nurtured a true martial spirit was also known as spirit soil. Yen Zhaoge was currently activating all that he had learnt, his aura qi condensing and manifesting, resembling 1,000 li of fertile soil, only waiting to be sown. If it was Broad Creed Mountain's clear qi profound art, Yen Zhaoge would actually already be able to condense a spirit seed, stepping into the mid-spirit vessel martial Grandmaster realm. However, the spirit seed that Yen Zhaoge wanted to form was not with the clear qi profound art as its foundation, but with the peerless heavenly scripture as its foundation. This way, the difficulty would inevitably be much greater. Yen Zhaoge would have to carefully analyze it, seeking to perfect it, on the way to the North Sea. Other than controlling the underground splitting shuttle, Yen Zhaoge had always been making good use of his time, focusing on his own cultivation. Having been taught by Yen Zhaoge, the accompanying who was already able to generally control the underground splitting shuttle. When Ahu manned the helm, Yen Zhaoge sat in meditation and cultivated. After Yen Zhaoge's cultivation had temporarily come to a halt, he took over, while Ahu temporarily rested. While he was resting, Ahu was like Yen Zhaoge, sitting in the meditative position, his eyes closed as he cultivated earnestly. As he inhaled and exhaled, streams of black qi were emitted from his nose and mouth. They were not smoke, instead resembling flowing winds. Accompanied by Ahu's unceasing inhalation and exhalation, a small black storm seemed to arise around his body, gradually surrounding him. Just like this, the two alternated shifts, cultivating as they traversed the East Sea and the North Sea, heading towards the extreme northern lands. One day, Yen Zhaoge manned the helm, controlling the underground splitting shuttle to rise to the surface of the sea. Currently, they were in the North Sea. The surface of the sea was filled with floating ice, with numerous icy winds blowing between the heavens and the earth. Even a martial grandmaster like Yen Zhaoge felt a bone-piercing coldness, let alone ordinary people or body refinement martial practitioners, even martial scholars with lower cultivation bases. Even martial scholars with lower cultivation bases might be frozen to death in such an environment. This place was only at the edge of the extreme north. The extreme north, together with the great western desert and the southern wasteland's Inferno Palace, was known as a place of great danger. Swiveling his head to look at Ahu, Yen Zhaoge saw that as the aura qi of Ahu's entire body pulsed, numerous black gales surged from his body. The acupoints all over Ahu's body opened and closed at the same time. Each acupoint was like a door. When the door closed, the phoenix calmed the waves. When the door opened, a terrifying black astral wind blew out. Like Yen Zhaoge, Ahu had already reached the final bottleneck. The spirit soil was already incomparably complete. Once it grew its own spirit seed, it would be able to successfully step into the second layer of Martial Grandmaster, the spirit-nurturing middle stage. However, Ahu was not in a hurry to take this step. Instead, he was still carefully polishing himself. Glancing at him, Yen Zhaoge said, "Calm your mind down a little." The extreme west purple qi, requires a tranquil heart to control the restless winds, transforming the chi of the heavens and the earth into something still. Finally, it can erupt with a violent and shocking power that resembles a violent tsunami. Movement and stillness are its essence. Sitting in the meditative position within the underground splitting shuttle, Ahu's eyes were still tightly shut, but he nodded slightly. In the great tribulation of Broad Creed Mountain earlier, most of the survivors of Black Nightmare Mountain, whether they had joined the decimating abyss or not, had all participated in attacking Broad Creed Mountain. The final result had naturally been that they had been completely wiped out. The two martial grandmasters with the highest cultivation bases, late Essence Talisman martial grandmasters, had both perished at Broad Creed Mountain. After this battle, while the former sacred ground, Black Nightmare Mountain's lineage, which had been struggling at death's door to this day, could not be said to have been completely destroyed, it was not far from it. And in this battle, as the victor, Broad Creed Mountain had killed and captured some of the survivors of Black Nightmare Mountain who had attacked Broad Creed Mountain, and had also gained some benefits. Comparatively speaking, the greater benefit was that they had successfully obtained the peak martial legacy of Black Nightmare Mountain. The position of the extreme west purple chi in Black Nightmare Mountain was like the lower half of the clear chi profound art in Broad Creed Mountain and the great sun true chi in the Sacred Sun clan. The technique that Ahu had previously cultivated in the Black Nightmare Godly Wind had advanced towards the extreme west purple chi. Yen Zhaoga had imparted the extreme west purple chi to Ahu, hoping that Ahu would be able to use the extreme west purple chi, which was superior to the Black Nightmare Godly Wind, as his foundation in the step of forming a spirit seed. After the great battle of Broad Creed Mountain, Ahu, who had been unceasingly cultivating, now had already gradually matured with the extreme west purple chi, just that it still needed to be tempered. Observing carefully, Yen Zhaoga saw that as Ahu cultivated, within the black storm that his entire body was swallowing and emanating, there were already numerous faint purple streams of chi circulating alongside the black wind. From the looks of it, they resembled numerous streaks of purple light mixed within the black storm, traversing unceasingly. When Yen Zhaoga himself cultivated, his aura chi that resembled chaos gradually sank, seemingly transforming into numerous turbid chi that formed the great earth resembling 1,000 li of fertile soil. However, after having sunk to the maximum, Yen Zhaoga's aura chi instantly became vast and ethereal, resembling numerous streams of clear chi that floated upwards to become the heavens. The transformation between the two seemed contradictory and abrupt. If someone else saw this, they would only find it hard to understand. However, at this moment, all of this was truly happening to Yen Zhaoga. The clear chi rising upwards to become the heavens, the turbid chi sinking downwards to become the earth. The two occurred simultaneously, merging as one, as though the entire heavens and earth had been formed from a single stream of Yen Zhaoga's aura chi. The clear chi within the sky agglomerated, gradually transforming into a that resembled a seed, while the spirit soil below was heavy and vast. The two were separate, yet unified, finally combining together as one. Yen Zhaoga opened his eyes, abruptly inhaling, controlling the underground splitting shuttle by the side. Ahu was stunned to feel that outside of the underground splitting shuttle, above the Arctic frozen sea, the spiritual chi of the surrounding vast heavens and earth instantly all rapidly converged towards Yen Zhaoga as their center. Young master, you've stepped into the second level of the martial grandmaster realm, the mid-spirit vessel stage. Ahu looked at Yen Zhaoga. While he had always thought of himself as Yen Zhaoga's #1 lackey, also making it one of his goals to flatter Yen Zhaoga to the point of comfort, now he was unable to say anything for a time. Once upon a time, due to age and the amount of time he had spent cultivating, the difference in cultivation bases between him and Yen Zhaoga had been very great. Now, however, Yen Zhaoge had actually already surpassed him. While there was a feeling of young master is indeed young master, Ahu could not help but be a little stunned, unable to regain his wits. Yen Zhaoge smiled. If I don't see wrongly, you will also be arriving soon. Ahu smacked his lips, clicking his tongue in praise. Advancing forward, traversing the icy sea, arriving on dry land once more. Yen Zhaoge and Ahu kept the underground splitting shuttle and went ashore. The extreme northern lands were rarely visited by humans. It should have been like this. However, Yen Zhaoge and Ahu discovered other people, and many of them, people of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. To be continued. Chapter 337. In the extreme northern snowy plains, a massive lake of ice sat on the ground. The surface of the lake was completely frozen, but light could vaguely be seen flickering beneath the ice. Everything looked so peaceful, but in the center of the lake, there were currently quite a few people standing on the surface of the ice. One of them was a youth dressed in the garb of a direct disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. His expression was calm yet vaguely gloomy. It was precisely the thunder-rumbling young master, Lin Zhou, while his father Lin Tianfeng had died. The potential and ability that Lin Zhou had displayed was already sufficient for the entire Heavenly Thunder Hall to think highly of him. His position within the Heavenly Thunder Hall was not affected at all. Lin Zhou looked before him. A round hole had already been opened on the surface of the ice, the cold lake water suffused with a green light. After a short while, a figure floated up from the water, jumping onto the layer of ice. This person's entire body was filled with warmth, driving away the bitter cold. This tall, middle-aged man swiveled his head to look at Lin Zhou. This place is indeed strange, but the legendary remains of the glacial dragon martial saint cannot be found. Wanting to open this place, some treasures or special techniques might be required. The middle-aged man asked in a heavy tone, Lin Zhou, since you have received the news, do you know what it is? Lin Zhou looked silently at the ice lake beneath his feet. In his memories, when the remains of the glacial dragon martial saint had appeared, it should originally have been that broad Creed Mountain disciple named Yi Jing who had unearthed it. But now, as far as he knew, that Yi Jing had long since died. As a Heavenly Thunder Hall disciple, it was very hard for him to know the specifics. However, various signs indicated that it was most likely related to Yen Zhaoge. Thinking of this name, Lin Zhou's gaze flickered slightly, but he quickly regained his calm, just that his gaze was even colder, different from Old Man Great Sorrow's tomb. Lin Zhou had later learned of the specifics and the mechanisms within. Lin Zhou had only heard of the news of the glacial dragon martial saint's remains, knowing its location. All that was left was to adapt to the situation after arriving there. His voice was slightly hoarse as he said, "There are signs that Broad Creed Mountain's first seed elder, the now-deceased Shirtai, once rushed to this extreme northern snowy plains and the North Sea region 2 years ago. Broad Creed Mountain is also keeping an eye on the remains of the glacial dragon martial saint. There might be some clues on their hands." Lin Zhou stepped on the ice. The environment of the northernmost snowy plains is special. The flow of the Earth's energy is strange, causing the relics left behind by the glacial dragon martial saint to be like fish swimming in an underground river, moving along with the spiritual energy. There are only a few times when it will be in a state of stillness so that it can be easily located. This time, the place where it stopped is right under our feet. Lin Zhou said, "The people of Broad Creed Mountain have waited for close to 2 years, also waiting for this moment. They will definitely come looking for us." That middle-aged man frowned. Having obtained the Extreme Een crown, the Sacred Sun clan has caught a breath of relief. Now, other than Turbid Wave Pavilion, the other 5 sacred grounds have fallen into a stalemate once more, with no one daring to relax lightly. whether it is our clan or Broad Creed Mountain, only a few people are likely to come. Lin Zhou said softly, "After all, our clan has dominated the northern lands for many years, and we still have some geographical advantages. It's a pity that the environment here is really not suitable for ambushing. Otherwise, we would be able to lie in wait for the people of Broad Creed Mountain to deliver themselves to our doorstep. After obtaining the things in their hands, we would be able to open this place." The middle-aged man said with a sullen face, "They are already on alert and searching. I hope they really come as you said." Yan Zhaoga and Ahu stood on a low hill, gazing into the distance. "This is as far as we can go. We can't get any closer. In this place, it is rather difficult to conceal one's tracks, unless one's cultivation base is much higher than the other parties." Yan Zhaoga shaded his eyes, muttering to himself as he gazed. "From the looks of it, it seems like they are on alert." Who said with a troubled look on his face, "Young master, the environment here is too bad. Wanting to sneak over and assassinate them would already be quite difficult. The key is that the other party has many people also being rather far away from each other, yet being able to see each other, being able to take care of each other. If we can't get rid of them all at once, with the news spreading, who knows if the Heavenly Thunder Hall has any peak experts here." Yan Zhaoga said, "There shouldn't be any essence, talisman, martial grandmasters. Before we came over this time, the atmosphere between the sacred grounds was tense once more, with swords drawn and bows bent, with no one daring to be distracted. Essence spirit martial grandmasters, there might be, but it's hard to say for the early, mid, and late stages." Yan Zhaoga stroked his lower chin. "Our clan and the Sacred Sun clan aside, with the Heavenly Thunder Hall being sandwiched between Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City, their days won't be easy." Ahu revealed a pained expression. "Young master, could it be that the news of us heading north was leaked, with the Heavenly Thunder Hall purposefully coming here to kill you?" "The possibility isn't high." Yan Zhaoga stroked his lower chin. "And, while I can't be sure, it also can't be considered too unexpected. There is someone in the Heavenly Thunder Hall who might know about the matter of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint's legacy." Yan Zhaoga's last sentence was spoken in a voice that only he could hear. Who swiveled his head to look at him curiously. Yan Zhaoga said, "The people of the Heavenly Thunder Hall are most likely here for the legacy of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint." He gazed into the distance again. "The approximate distance to the location is still very far. The security circle is so wide." Ahu scratched his head. "Young master, how do you know that they are here for the legacy of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint? If they really are here for the legacy of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint, also knowing its location, wouldn't they have already beat us to it by now?" Yan Zhaoga smiled, but did not answer, taking out a jade coin. While that jade coin was of very good quality, there was already no longer any spiritual chi within, its luster mild, no spiritual light surging. Weighing the jade coin in his palm, Yan Zhaoga said, "They need this thing. The spiritual chi within has already been completely absorbed by me. Opening the restrictions left behind by the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint requires my own aura chi. If I don't have it, we can only slowly break it from the outside." Ahu rubbed his palms. "Then, young master, now we—" Yan Zhaoga laughed. "No rush. There are also benefits to them being gathered in this region, making it convenient for us to do other things." Saying thus, Yan Zhaoga turned and descended the snow-covered hill, bringing Ahu along as they went far away from this area, heading elsewhere. Yan Zhaoga headed east, pausing from time to time, quietly feeling the flow of the spiritual chi of the heavens and the earth in the vicinity. Just like this, after walking for many days, Yan Zhaoga finally came to a complete halt, standing firmly on the snowy plains. Lowering his head and looking at the ice and snow beneath his feet for a long time, Yan Zhaoga exerted force with his feet. the frozen earth that was like steel also breaking apart in large amounts. The ice and snow and the earth split apart layer by layer, Yin Zhaoge's figure also descending. After a moment, Yin Zhaoge could only feel the resistance beneath his feet abruptly lessen, the earth beginning to turn soft. After another moment, Yin Zhaoge leapt up, returning to the snowy plains. Gazing down, he saw that there was actually steam rising from the crevice in the ground, emanating outwards. "Young master, this is—" Looking carefully, Ahu saw that amidst the world of ice and snow, a hot spring had actually appeared. And the color of this spring water was actually blue. His hands crossed before his chest. Yin Zhaoge similarly gazed at the blue-hot spring down below as he said softly, "This is the hope of little June, and sister-in-law Yuzhen." Chapter 338. Ahu looked curiously at that blue spirit spring, while Yin Zhaoge raised his head, looking at the surrounding heavens and earth. Feeling the circulation of the spiritual qi between the heavens and the earth, he extended his hand and used his aura qi to capture a portion of the blue spring water, carefully savoring it. After a long time, Yin Zhaoge murmured, "The time is still not ripe. The spiritual qi here needs to accumulate a little more." Saying thus, Yin Zhaoge looked at his surroundings, then exerted force once more. This time, however, he destroyed the surrounding soil and rocks, burying the mouth of that blue hot spring once more. The changes in the soil and rocks were inevitably a little conspicuous on the snowy plains. The aura qi around Yin Zhaoge's body abruptly changed, becoming bone-piercingly cold. Streams of dense white aura qi resembled numerous ice dragons, flying about in the air before landing on the ground, sealing up the soil and rocks that had been broken apart earlier. By the side, Ahu also helped to fill in the gaps, reconstructing the scene so that it looked more or less the same as its surroundings, not being too different. Having done all this, Yin Zhaoge said, "Come, let's go to the next place first." As he led the way, Yin Zhaoge said, "Ahu, give me those 4 sabers that I passed to you earlier." Ahu did as he was told, taking out 4 extremely ordinary-looking short sabers that were no longer than a foot long, handing them over to Yin Zhaoge. Looking carefully, one would be able to discover that these 4 short sabers clearly still had not been sharpened, their edges still being blunt. On their blades, however, a crimson light flickered, resembling blazing fire. Receiving these 4 short sabers, Yin Zhaoge swept them with his aura qi, causing them to hover in midair, stopping by Yin Zhaoge's side. As the sabers shook, flowing fire vaguely danced about, condensing into an illusory line of fire above Yin Zhaoge's head, drifting indeterminately into the distance. Following the general direction in which the line of fire extended, Yin Zhaoge brought Ahu along as they advanced. As they advanced, that illusory line of fire gradually stabilized, finally pointing straight in a single direction. This illusory line of fire was extremely conspicuous amidst the wind and snow, but only Yin Zhaoge, who wielded those 4 sabers, could see it. Following the direction of the line of fire, after a long journey, Yin Zhaoge and Ahu finally stopped, following the line of fire on the snowy ground. Yin Zhaoge saw that the illusory line of fire shot straight into the ground. Yin Zhaoge raised his head to observe his surroundings, feeling the flow of the spiritual qi here. After a while, he muttered to himself, "This place should be fine." He patted the ground lightly with his palm, causing the ground to tremble. The 4 blades hovering in the air descended, their tips touching the ground. Yin Zhaoge reached out, slamming the 4 sabers into the ground one after another. At this moment, a scarlet flame appeared on the saber hilt that was left outside the soil. In the next moment, the scarlet flame slowly turned into an icy blue. Yin Zhaoge nodded, pulling out the 4 sabers one by one before retrieving the underground splitting shuttle once more, riding it alongside Ahu as they entered the depths of the great earth down below. In the frozen ground, the underground splitting shuttle didn't seem very agile. However, very quickly, Yen Zhaoge, who was controlling the underground splitting shuttle, felt the pressure up ahead lessen. The underground splitting shuttle shot out of the soil and rocks. While the surroundings were still completely dark, Yen Zhaoge could determine that the place he was currently in was completely surrounded by a thick layer of ice. Here, hidden deep underground in a massive ice cave, was also one of Yen Zhaoge's targets. Passing through the ice layer, they suddenly came to an empty space. Yen Zhaoge and Ahu had already exited the ice layer on the underground splitting shuttle, arriving in the empty space within the ice cave. Being underground, within the ice cave, it should originally be a completely sealed space, but Yen Zhaoge and Ahu were able to breathe freely here. The environment before them also lit up slightly, turning dark blue. Looking at the blue stream of light that resembled a dark river of glaciers flowing silently before him, Yen Zhaoge instantly smiled. "It's here." Ahu stared at that blue stream of light. "Young master, this thing seems to be in existence formed from the highly condensed chi of ice and snow." Yen Zhaoge said, "You're right. Even essence talisman, martial grandmasters might not be able to withstand it. Therefore, you must remember not to touch it, not even a single drop of it. Otherwise, you will instantly be frozen into an ice sculpture, all of your flesh and blood frozen solid." Ahu nodded. "In this ice cave, it instead doesn't feel that cold. Therefore, the cold chi has all been condensed within the blue stream of light. Just looking at it would cause one's heart to palpitate. This is the extreme northern icy plains, the source of the land of ice and snow, born of the creation of the heavens and the earth, the ice pith vein here." Yen Zhaoge's expression was rather solemn. "This is actually still just a tiny branch vein. If it were the main vein, even martial saints would not be able to touch it lightly. If one were to plunge their entire body within, they might also be frozen to death." Yen Zhaoge sighed emotionally. "The extreme coldness of the heavens and earth of the eight extremities world surpasses this." Ahu shrunk his neck back. "Then, young master, what are we doing here?" Yen Zhaoge said, "Doing an experiment. If it succeeds, we might be able to accomplish something major." Ahu blinked, a blank look on his face. Yen Zhaoge did not cease as he took out various materials that he had prepared earlier, setting them up as he said, "It is recorded in ancient texts that before the Great Calamity, there was once a hegemonic power of the martial Tao known as the Snowy Immortal Palace. Within the Snowy Immortal Palace was a heavenly frost ice spring, which was extremely miraculous. However, afterwards, without any prior warning whatsoever, this heavenly frost ice spring began to slowly dry up. The reason for this could not be ascertained." Yen Zhaoge raised his hands, for fiery red sabers flying out one after another, stabbing into the layer of ice up above in 4 different directions. "I also do not understand the reason for this, but I have some guesses," Yen Zhaoge said. "The creation of the heavens and the earth is actually one and the same. The spiritual chi flow of the entire world seems to be going their own way, forming layer after layer of variations. However, if we look at it from a holistic perspective, there is a network to follow. It is just that some are more obvious, while some are more concealed. Some can be touched by us, while some cannot." Using various materials, Yen Zhaoge speedily set up a formation here. Even as he planned the formation, he said, "Extreme cold and extreme heat seem to oppose each other, but under certain circumstances, it is actually like yin and yang merging together. No one attacked the Snowy Immortal Palace that year. Under normal circumstances, the heavenly frost ice spring of the Snowy Immortal Palace would also have been far from having its spiritual chi completely depleted. What could have caused the spring water to dry then?" Finishing his work, Yen Zhaoge lightly rubbed his temples. "My guess is that someone opened up a different path, exceeding everyone's expectations. exceeding even the snowy, immortal palace's expectations. Using a method that no one would have thought of, seemingly bizarre, he succeeded in doing so. Hearing this, Ahu thought about it. Young master, what you mean is that someone touched the fire pith vein, affecting the opposition between ice and fire, yin and yang merging, thereby changing the ice pith vein, and causing the heavenly frost ice spring of the snowy, immortal palace to naturally dry up? Yen Zhaoga nodded. It is very difficult to say. Under normal circumstances, if that person really had such great ability, he would just directly attack the snowy, immortal palace, trampling them to the ground. However, this person did not do so. This means that he may only have used some sort of shortcut, truly moving 1,000 caddies with little effort, thus achieving his goal. Ahu asked curiously, first, not mentioning whether there is such a great force to affect the earth veins, how can he be sure that only the heavenly frost ice spring of the snowy, immortal palace would be affected, with nothing happening to the other ice pith veins? Chapter 339. Yen Zhaoga stared at the blue stream of light before him. I am also unable to ascertain what method my ancestors used. My idea is to use these things. Saying thus, he took out a fiery red rock, placing it at the center of the formation he had set up. That rock flickered, as though it was breathing with life. Yen Zhaoga said, when Grandmaster and the others counterattacked the fire domain, I specially asked them to pay attention to a few things, bringing them back if they could get their hands on them. Of these, the most important is this, a fire pith crystal, a product of the further solidification of the underground fire pith crystal. Also, it must be a fire pith crystal produced in the southern underground palace. Yen Zhaoga continued setting up the formation. Through this object, along with other methods, we should be able to lock onto the southern underground palace. Ahu helped out by the side, but young master, wanting to cause a change in the earth veins is not an easy thing, with our cultivation bases. Even with the help of the formation, we should still not be able to do it, right? After all, this formation is not the clear Qi Grand formation that Broad Creed Mountain guards. Should we first set up the front lines here, then wait for family head or the old clan chief to come over? Hearing his words, Yen Zhaoga answered, Father and Grandmaster are currently in a standoff with the Sacred Sun clans, Wang Guanglia and the others, unable to leave easily. Even if they do manage to escape and come to the extreme northern lands, they will also be detected by the other side. At that time, they will either intercept us or turn to attack our clan's core grounds. That would not be worth it. Therefore, I will do this. Yen Zhaoga laughed. As for how to do it, just based on my current strength, it is naturally impossible. However, I have an idea that perhaps can be tested. If it succeeds, us two Spirit Vessel Martial Grandmasters will also be able to accomplish something that even Essence Talisman Martial Grandmasters might not be able to. As he said this, Yen Zhaoga suddenly took out an object, a small black incense burner. It was precisely the earth-devouring burner. Looking at the small incense burner, Ahu blinked. Young master, I remember that you obtained this from slaying that little ghost called Zhaohao in the devilish domain at Clear Concealed Lake. Yen Zhaoga said, It is still the same now. This treasure is able to absorb all things, bearing an extremely powerful destructive power. The experiment I want to do is to see if it can withstand the terrifying cold power of the ice pith vein. Ahu mumbled, but in my memory, you said that you have never been able to freely control this thing. That's right. Even now, it's still the same. This treasure can only passively absorb attacks and actively approach it. I can't control it to do anything. Yen Zhaoga said nonchalantly, Still, there's an old saying that's right. Things are dead, but people are alive. Use your brain. Yen Zhaoga punched towards the formation on the ground, the strong winds of his fist intent stimulating the formation as the light of fire instantly surged from it. with the formation as the center, a wave of heat spread out in the underground ice cave. Stimulated by this heat, the originally quiet and seemingly harmless blue stream of light immediately became violent, an extremely terrifying cold chi that caused one's entire body to numb erupted from the ice pith vein before numerous streams of ice blue fog swept over towards the formation that Yen Zhaoge was in, as though wanting to extinguish this small ember. Ahu was dumbfounded. Young master. Even as Yen Zhaoge stared fixedly at the earth-devouring burner, he had already taken out the underground splitting shuttle once more. As long as he saw that the situation was not right, he would immediately pull Ahu along and retreat. However, the earth-devouring burner did not disappoint him. That inconspicuous-looking little black incense burner, as it faced the assault of the ice blue fog, erupted with a shocking force, absorbing a great amount of the ice fog within. It resembled a black hole, greedily devouring the roiling ice fog, looking like it would not reject anything that came its way. As he opened his eyes, he shockingly saw that within the ice pith vein, there were also strands of blue light that were drawn out, merging with the ice fog and being devoured by the earth-devouring burner. Ahu was taken aback. Where exactly did this little thing come from, actually being able to absorb even the ice pith vein? Won't it freeze and crack? Yen Zhaoge narrowed his eyes, similarly gazing at the earth-devouring burner as he murmured, "That's right, it is indeed not simple. While I guessed that it should be able to bear it, after really confirming this, I also feel that it is a little inconceivable. Still, whatever the case, with this most important step having succeeded, my original plan will already be feasible." After observing for a while longer and confirming that the earth-devouring burner had not reached its limits, Yen Zhaoge felt reassured as he kept the underground splitting shuttle once more. Ahu clicked his tongue in wonder. "Still, young master, it is only passively absorbing and not actively devouring. The power of this scale is still a little small. Can it affect the ice pith vein, thereby affecting the fire pith vein?" Carefully looking at that blue light, he saw that as it pulsed, it seemed to be communicating unceasingly with other places. A portion of its power being sucked away by the earth-devouring burner seemed harmless as it was very quickly replenished. Yen Zhaoge said, "There are naturally follow-up methods. It's not that everything will be fine now." Saying thus, he punched out once more. With the earth-devouring burner bearing the pressure of the ice fog, the formation was able to continue circulating as usual. Streams of red light surged, coming into contact with the ice pith vein. The 4 fiery red sabers stabbed within the layer of ice also lit up with a red light at this moment, shining along with it. The self-adjustment and balance of the ice pith vein was affected, becoming somewhat sluggish. Like this, the unceasing absorption of the power of the ice pith vein by the earth-devouring burner gradually showed results. It was just that this effect was extremely slow and minute, virtually weak to the point that it was hard to detect. Yen Zhaoge said, "Moving 1,000 caddies with little effort is not that easy. What we have to do now is just wait quietly, waiting for sand to form a tower, many a little becoming a mickle, until the moment when a fundamental change finally occurs." Ahu asked, "Young master, could it be that the southern underground palace over at the fire domain will be like the heavenly frost ice spring of the snowy immortal palace that year?" Yen Zhaoge looked at the earth-devouring burner. "That won't be the case. The scale of the southern underground palace is much greater than that of the heavenly frost ice spring. Unless the main vein of the ice pith vein can be shaken, it would be impossible for the southern underground palace to be destroyed. Therefore, I am not thinking of weakening it, instead wanting it to grow stronger." Yen Zhaoge said mildly, "It is already not easy for people to enter in the first place. At that time, other than Huang Guanglie, no one else of the Sacred Sun clan will have to think about entering." He smiled. All right, let us wait here patiently. Yen Zhaoge guarded the formation, having nothing else to do, who began cultivating earnestly, once more attempting a breakthrough towards a higher level. Many days passed. The streams of purple qi amidst the black aura qi around his entire body grew denser and denser. As time passed, the purple qi finally became extremely vast, then congregated together, condensing into a tiny speck of purple light. The black storm transformed into an existence that resembled black soil. That speck of purple light slowly sunk, merging within the black spirit soil. Ahu's entire body shook as he opened his eyes. There actually seemed to be specks of purple light within them as well, vanishing in an instant. Yen Zhaoge smiled. Congratulations, Ahu. The second level of the martial grandmaster realm, the mid-spirit vessel stage, succeeded. Ahu grinned widely as he chuckled, seeming exceptionally happy. After his happiness, Ahu scratched his head, asking, Young master, how is the situation of the ice pith vein here? The corners of Yen Zhaoge's mouth arched lightly upwards. You will see very soon. Chapter 340. In this long period of time, the earth-devouring burner had already absorbed who knows how much ice vein pit's cold energy. The fiery red glow of the operating formation had already dimmed significantly. The blue stream of light in front of Yen Zhaoge, and who also underwent some changes from before. The degree of change was very subtle, but it was real enough to be felt. Seeing this scene, Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself, the following wave will cause a rather large disturbance. I hope that there are no others nearby. Still, this bit of risk has to be taken. He took out the underground splitting shuttle once again and entered it with Ahu. He activated the underground splitting shuttle to pass through the layer of ice and permafrost, returning to the surface. Not long after they returned to the ground, the two of them immediately felt the ground beneath their feet shaking. Yen Zhaoge lowered his head to look at the snowy plains of the extreme north, where a local earthquake seemed to be currently occurring. In the next moment, the ground cracked open. Not only was the ground cracking, but the rocks and ice were also collapsing. It was as if a huge hole had appeared underground, causing the entire area above to collapse. A bottomless pit appeared on the snowy plain. It covered a vast area, and intense tremors occasionally came from below. Standing by the edge of the massive crater, looking downwards, Yen Zhaoge and Ahu could only see pitch-black darkness. This time, they didn't use the subterranean splitting shuttle. The two of them directly descended from the edge of the pit. As they descended, at the end of the darkness, there seemed to be an icy blue radiance flickering. Young master, did you succeed? Ahu asked as he walked. Yen Zhaoge surveyed their surroundings. Just now, this was the result of the ice pith vein finally being touched. However, in order to use the changes in the ice pith vein here to influence the fire pith vein far away in the southern wilderness, it will still have to continue for a period of time. When he reached the ice cave at the bottom of the pit, he saw that the formation was still quietly circulating. The ice pith vein, which was like a confluence of blue light, was still quietly flowing. The earth-devouring burner was still devouring large amounts of icy mist and cold energy, as well as the essence of the ice pith vein. Yen Zhaoge gazed towards the sky, looking at the descending radiance, as though he was looking at the mouth of the well from the bottom of a well. The hole is too big, so it's hard to cover it up. Otherwise, if the rocks fall down, it might affect the formation here. Yen Zhaoge sighed regretfully. Such a large crater is too conspicuous on the snowy plains. Luckily, the extreme northern lands are rarely visited by humans. I hope that no one will come close to this place. There are some risks that cannot be avoided. Yen Zhaoge came to the side of the earth-devouring burner, sitting down in the meditative position. Ahu also sat by the side. The two of them looked at the earth-devouring burner and ice vein ice pith patiently. However, Yen Zhaoge discovered that his luck was sometimes not that good. Within his right eye, the purplish-green light of thunder flickered slightly. Raising his head and gazing upwards, Yen Zhaoge was unable to see anything. However, with the help of the eye of the Thunder Emperor, he could vaguely sense that someone was approaching. Whose expression turned serious. "Young master, is there someone here?" Yen Zhaoge nodded. "That's right, and his cultivation base is also not low. He should at least be an Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster." The other party's figure gradually appeared within Yen Zhaoge's field of vision. Correspondingly, the newcomer could also clearly see Yen Zhaoge's appearance. The other party had only been curious at first, but after clearly seeing Yen Zhaoge's appearance, his expression instantly turned rather savage. A terrifying black storm revolved around his entire body, gradually having the momentum of sweeping through the entire ice cave. Having experienced the extermination of Black Nightmare Mountain and the great battle of Broad Creed Mountain earlier, they should already be more or less dead. Now, there are still experts of the Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster level still alive. Yen Zhaoge's gaze flickered slightly as he recognized the other party's origins. It looks like it's one of the remnants of the Sacred Sun clan who did not participate in the battle at Broad Creed Mountain. I had not thought that we would actually meet in the extreme northern lands. Yen Zhaoge's expression was heavy as he remained by the side of the earth-devouring burner, not moving as he looked quietly at the newcomer. The other party similarly stared coldly at Yen Zhaoge. However, after exchanging gazes for a moment, the black storm around his body suddenly calmed before he retreated. Whose expression did not look relaxed. "Young master, could he have gone to find other helpers?" Yen Zhaoge's fame could be considered to have spread far and wide. First, not mentioning his great strength, the key was that everyone knew that he possessed a sacred artifact fragment, possessing extremely brutal power. While the newcomer was at the 4th level of the Martial Grandmaster realm, an early Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster, he also did not have the confidence of being able to withstand the attack of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. It would be best if the other party retreated in the face of difficulties, but with the enmity between Broad Creed Mountain and Black Nightmare Mountain, it was hard to believe that they would let the matter rest just like that. In the current extreme northern lands, there were quite a few Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners present. If that Black Nightmare Mountain martial practitioner knew about it, these Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners would all be able to become his reinforcements and helpers. Yen Zhaoge glanced at the earth-devouring burner. Some time is still needed. Black Nightmare Mountain and the Heavenly Thunder Hall are not of the same lineage. It would be much more difficult for them to communicate with each other. If he goes to get reinforcements, it should also take a very long time for him to return. After all, when we circled around the Heavenly Thunder Hall's people to come here back then, we already had to travel for a long time. Yen Zhaoge remained seated on the ground, pondering as he said, "Ahu, I will continue watching here. You guard the perimeter." Ahu acknowledged his words and left. Yen Zhaoge sat in the meditative position, a jade coin that was already rather dim now appearing within his hands. An Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster expert of the Heavenly Thunder Hall led many Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners in speeding ahead. Lin Zhou followed by his side. This middle-aged Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster glanced at Lin Zhou somewhat discontentedly. "You should even more so remain at the Legacy Site. I know that Elder Lin's death has caused you to hate Broad Creed Mountain to the bone, but to our clan, the Legacy Site is still more important." Lin Zhou said mildly, "The guarding force left at the Legacy Site is also sufficient. Wanting to open the Legacy Site, it ultimately falls on those of Broad Creed Mountain." Don't worry too much. Elder Zhen, I am currently very calm. Elder Zhen snorted, no longer speaking as he gazed at the old man leading the way at the very front. Those of Black Nightmare Mountain should be trustworthy. Still, that Yan Zhaoge, instead of going to the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint, what is he doing elsewhere? Lin Zhou did not speak, just hastening his pace. There were some things that he was unable to tell others about. For example, he just kept feeling that there was something wrong with Yan Zhaoge. While it was different from his own special circumstances, it was also different from ordinary people. It was just that the details were like looking at flowers through a fog, as he was unable to see them clearly. Under such circumstances, if he did not personally make a trip, Lin Zhou would never be able to rest easy. Leading the way at the front, the remnant elder of Black Nightmare Mountain, Zhang Shuo, had a similarly gloomy expression on his face. He did not have much of a relationship with the Heavenly Thunder Hall, but the enemy of an enemy was a friend. Between Black Nightmare Mountain and Broad Creed Mountain, enmity as deep as the sea was already insufficient to describe it. Because of secluded cultivation, Zhang Shuo had not been able to make it to the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain. However, he did not feel fortunate in the slightest. Seeing Broad Creed Mountain extinguish the decimating abyss, resisting the great sun and the heavenly thunder, Zhang Shuo could only feel indignant. He only hoped that in his lifetime he would be able to see the day Broad Creed Mountain was destroyed. If he could not see it, then having the chance to destroy Broad Creed Mountain's most outstanding younger generation, he would be able to rest in peace even in his coffin. To be continued. Chapter 341. Yan Zhaoge sat in the meditative position within the ice cave, the earth-devouring burner before him still unceasingly devouring the cold qi of the ice pith vein. In his hand there was a jade disc. At this moment, the jade coin within Yan Zhaoge's hand actually glowed, once more an ice-blue radiance flickering within. Holding the jade coin, Yan Zhaoge infused his aura qi bit by bit within. After a long period of time, the current ice pith vein was currently undergoing extremely minute changes. These changes were so minute, resembling a river changing its course. However, it was truly happening, filled with the heaviness of the changes of the heavens and the earth. Yan Zhaoge watched this scene silently. Wanting to change the direction of the spiritual qi of an earth vein was already an extremely difficult thing. Moreover, he was currently attempting to influence the fire pith vein of the southern wilderness through the ice pith vein of the extreme northern lands. As long as there was a slight change, it was possible for an extremely great change to occur. Feeling the changes in the ice pith vein with his heart, Yan Zhaoge pondered, it's about time for it to take effect. Thinking of this, Yan Zhaoge's gaze fell on the earth-devouring burner once more. This rare treasure that he had obtained after killing Zhao Haobak then had given Yan Zhaoge quite a few pleasant surprises. The tiny black incense burner seemed to really have the effect of swallowing the heavens and devouring the earth. Having devoured so much of the essence of the ice pith vein, it was actually still able to withstand it. Also, after having devoured a lot of cold qi, this earth-devouring burner itself seemed completely unaffected, as it was just like before. Thinking about it, it seemed a little ridiculous. However, if the earth-devouring burner had a life of its own, Yan Zhaoge would be able to feel a sense of nonchalance from it, as if it was able to lift something heavy as though it were light. Now, it was only passively absorbing, not actively circulating. If the earth-devouring burner circulated on its own, unleashing this strange devouring power to the maximum, what kind of scene would that be? Yan Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. A little interesting. Now a tiger's roar suddenly resounded from above. Yan Zhaoge recognized it to be Ahu's voice. In having hurriedly warned him, Ahu had not even had the time to run down. From this, It could be seen that the other party was coming with great momentum, possessing great strength. It's here, Yen Zhaoga sucked in a deep breath, taking out the underground splitting shuttle before standing at the center of the formation, stomping forcefully. The formation within the ice cave that flickered with a fiery red light instantly shook. The process of the earth-devouring burner absorbing the ice pith vein thus came to a halt. Yen Zhaoga waved his hand, his orochi grabbing over as he directly swept the earth-devouring burner back. Having done all this, Yen Zhaoga no longer looked at what would happen to the ice pith vein that resembled a river of blue light, not even turning his head back as he rapidly flew upwards. Extremely terrifying energy fluctuations could already be felt from above. Ahu's figure appeared. In a panic, he fled toward the bottom of the deep pit. Behind him, the terrifying lightning and the dark storm interweaved, turning into a scene of destruction that swept across the ice cave. Wind and thunder surged, enveloping the pit. The world of ice and snow transformed into a world of storms and thunder. More than one essence spirit martial grandmaster had attacked together. And before their figures could even be seen, the violent power of true essence transformed into a real thunderstorm, easily collapsing the ice cave. The terrifying power obscured the heavens and concealed the sun. Even as Yen Zhaoga raised his head and looked upwards now, he was unable to see the light seeping in from the crater. In the darkness, countless pieces of broken rocks and ice rained down like torrential rain. The immortal crane wings expanded behind Yen Zhaoga's back, quick as lightning, his movements agile as he ingeniously avoided the dense rain of shattered ice and rocks. However, these crushed ice and rocks were actually not that scary. What was terrifying was the storm and lightning that followed closely behind, sweeping away everything and destroying the ice cave. An ancient voice resounded from within the black storm. "Broad Creed, young master, a dragon amongst dragons, nice to meet you." And from within the thunder resounded the voice of a middle-aged man. "Broad Creed, young master, a dragon amongst dragons, nice to meet you. If you are slain here, Broad Creed Mountain will probably fly into a rage, carrying out the most tragic vengeance against our clan." Gradually, a tall figure that resembled a massive divinity of thunder appeared amidst the thunder. "However, some things that I heard earlier made me feel that if we could make you stay here forever, to our clan, the benefits would outweigh the disadvantages." The Heavenly Thunder Hall's elder, surnamed Zhen, strode into the ice cave. Beside him, the face of Black Nightmare Mountain's remnant elder Zheng Shuo was even gloomier. Behind Elder Zhen and Zheng Shuo were other Heavenly Thunder Hall martial grandmaster experts, not concealing their powerful auras in the slightest, as it was as though there was a thick layer of thunderclouds above their heads. The violent sound of thunder reverberated unceasingly. Amongst their group, there were also 2 early Essence Talisman martial grandmasters. A full 4 early Essence Talisman martial grandmasters had arrived here, directly trapping Yen Zhaoga and Ahu within the ice cave. While their family head had blocked their path, Yen Zhaoga was not panicked, as he instead smiled. "You have really come at a bad time." Saying thus, he raised the ice blue jade coin in his hand. "You have also come for the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint." Stimulating his orochi, the jade coin shone with an ice blue luster, the roar of a dragon vaguely resounding. Feeling the spiritual chi fluctuations emanating from that jade coin, Elder Zhen's pupils instantly dilated slightly, exactly the same as the legacy site, indeed the key to opening the legacy site. He didn't waste time on words, directly reaching out and grabbing towards Yen Zhaoga. The terrifying light of thunder transformed into a massive heaven-obscuring hand, numerous purplish-green snakes of electricity coiling about it. Yen Zhaoga flicked his hand, the ice-blue jade coin descending towards the depths of the ice cave. At the same time, he grabbed Ahu entering the underground splitting shuttle, transforming into a streak of light as he shot into the ice layer. Elder Zhen chortled, still grabbing towards Yen Zhaoge and the underground splitting shuttle. The other essence spirit martial grandmaster of the Heavenly Thunder Hall descended, going to retrieve the fallen jade coin. Zheng Shuo didn't even glance at that jade coin as his gaze remained fixated on Yen Zhaoge, a boundless black hurricane, resembling an enraged dragon, chased after Yen Zhaoge. Outside, amidst the crowd of Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners, Lin Zhou's figure appeared. He took out an orb, resembling a mother-child orb, a massive transparent orb with an even smaller orb at its core. Lin Zhou shattered the orb, the fragments transforming into radiance which instantly sealed the surrounding ice layer, forming a bright screen of light. As Yen Zhaoge's underground splitting shuttle shot into the radiance, while it could still continue advancing, its speed had clearly slowed. Behind him, Elder Zhen, Zheng Shuo, and the others were already rushing over. Yen Zhaoge shattered a newly created blood devil plate, the brutal blood-red light breaking through the radiance that blocked his way. However, this was a strange mother-child barrier. As one layer of radiance was broken, another layer immediately sealed it up once more. Yen Zhaoge raised his brows slightly. Yin-yang mother-child barrier? This thing is rarely seen. Lin Zhou looked coldly at Yen Zhaoge and the underground splitting shuttle. Yen Zhaoge, do you think that you can still play the same old trick? While the attacks of Elder Zhen and the other essence spirit martial grandmasters were already right before him, Yen Zhaoge smiled casually. I think that I can. Before his words had landed, from the depths of the ice cave down below, a powerful aura that was terrifying to the extreme, causing everyone's bodies to feel numb, shot up into the skies. To be continued. Chapter 342. A berserk cold wave surged up from the bottom of the ice cavern. The terrifying blue light instantly engulfed the ice cave from bottom to top, freezing everything it came into contact with. Yen Zhaoge had previously disturbed the ice pith vein, suddenly retracting the earth-devouring burner as Lin Zhou had attacked. Previously, the earth-devouring burner had continuously swallowed the ice essence cold energy, vaguely forming a balance. At this time, it suddenly lost its outlet. After being temporarily suppressed, it erupted with an even more ferocious momentum. That essence spirit martial grandmaster of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, who had descended to the depths of the ice cave in an attempt to retrieve the ice blue jade coin that Yen Zhaoge had thrown down, just happened to be facing the eruption of the cold tides. As if faced with a sudden flash flood, this essence spirit martial grandmaster was completely unable to dodge in time as he was instantly engulfed by the blue light. He wanted to cry out in alarm, he wanted to roar in anger, but he found that he couldn't make a sound. He was unable to circulate his surging quintessence, falling into a deathly stillness. His body could not feel any pain, only numbness and unconsciousness. His thoughts tended to stop, and he could no longer think. His mind became absent-minded. Of the three essence spirit martial grandmasters of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, who had come here, apart from him and Elder Zhen, there was another. Seeing this, his expression changed greatly. This third essence spirit martial grandmaster sensed the terror of the eruption of the ice pith vein, not daring to approach lightly. Therefore, with a flick of his hand, a purple chain flew towards his fellow disciple. The purple chains wrapped around the frozen great grandmaster and tried to drag him out. However, the chain was instantly stretched taut. Under the tug of the third essence spirit martial grandmaster, it was completely unable to move at all, feeling as if even the purple chain had been frozen solid. Dark blue frost quickly spread along the purple chain and rushed toward its owner's hand. The purple lightning on the surface of the purple chain was completely extinguished. A middle-grade spirit artifact, was destroyed just like that. The expression of the owner of the spirit weapon changed greatly once again. He let go in time, abandoning his spirit weapon. The moment he let go, the frost spread and froze the entire purple chain. The master loosened his grip, and the other end of the chain was connected to the ice essence vein. The chain did not bend and droop due to the weight, but was frozen into a perfectly straight line. The ferocious, icy blue light rose rapidly, drowning everything in ice. The storm and lightning that were wreaking havoc in the ice cave a moment ago were all swallowed up by the ice blue light. Just like that, the storm and thunder were frozen in the layer of ice, but their original forms did not change. They were still electric snakes and whirlwinds, just like the images on a painting. This bizarre and abnormal scene seemed even more bizarre and terrifying. Anything that approached the bottom of the ice cave, whether it was a person or an object, or whether it was stellar energy or true essence, was instantly frozen by the eruption of the cold wave. While that essence spirit martial grandmaster of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, who had tossed out the purple chain in an attempt to save them, had already been extremely cautious, the precondition for saving them being to first protect themselves. Faced with the terrifying eruption of the ice pith on the ground, there was nothing he could do. Seeing that things couldn't be done, he immediately gave up on his middle-rank spirit weapon and wanted to escape first. However, because of the entanglement between the purple chains and the cold wave, it was too late for him to escape now. The surging ice blue light was even faster than him. The martial practitioners of the Heavenly Thunder Hall had always been proud of their speed, also having the ability to look down on martial practitioners of the same cultivation level of the Eight Extremities world. However, in the face of the terrifying power of the transformation of the world, it was still too slow. As this essence spirit martial grandmaster's leg turned numb, he immediately knew that things were bad. He could also be considered a decisive person, as he directly chopped down with a palm, severing that numb leg of his, lest the cold chi spread and invade his entire body. However, he was still a step too slow. Very quickly, he experienced what his fellow disciple had felt earlier. He lost all feeling in his body, his true essence ceasing to circulate, his mind dazed and dazed. In just an instant, yet another early essence spirit martial grandmaster was engulfed by the eruption of the ice blue light. Even an early essence spirit martial grandmaster was like this, let alone the others within the ice cave. One after another, Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners were engulfed by the ice blue light. As their bodies landed within the ice pith vein, they were quickly sealed in ice, still looking vivid and lifelike, resembling mosquitoes sealed within amber. However, the next moment, their corpses began gradually disintegrating, gradually turning into flying ash beneath the power of extreme coldness, not a single trace of them left behind, because they had gone to pursue Yan Zhaoga. Elder Zhen and Zheng Shuo were currently slightly further away from the ice blue light. Seeing that terrifying tide of coldness erupt at this moment, the reflection of the blue light caused their faces to turn livid. However, at this time, they could no longer care about Yan Zhaoga and the underground splitting shuttle. How to survive amidst the eruption of this terrifying tide of coldness was currently the most pressing matter for them. The tide of coldness shot straight up, resembling a fountain as it erupted upwards from the depths of the ice cave, directly shooting upwards, flying towards the mouth of the massive crater. They would not be able to outrun the erupting tide of coldness no matter what. Elder Zhen and Zheng Shuo both made a prompt decision, separately shooting towards the layer of ice closest to them. Not needing to enter the ice layer through a special technique, like the underground splitting shuttle, the power of an essence spirit martial grandmaster directly shattered the ice layer before rushing within. Virtually in the instant that they had just entered the ice layer, the terrifying tide of coldness passed behind them, erupting upwards all the way, not giving Elder Zhen and the others a chance to catch their breaths. An ice blue light also chased after them along the layer of ice that they had broken through. While its speed was much slower than directly erupting upwards, it still resembled a flood as it closely followed behind Elderjun and Zheng Shuo. The two Essence Spirit martial grandmasters did not dare to slow down in the slightest as they continued speeding forward, forcibly digging their way out of the passageway with their own strength, speeding forward all the way as they evaded the ice blue light that followed them like shadows. Being at the outermost area, furthest from the bottom of the ice cave where the tide of coldness erupted, Lin Zhou did not immediately receive the baptism of this terrifying natural disaster. However, witnessing the fate of a senior of his clan, he still felt a chill run down his spine. Not daring to hesitate in the slightest, Lin Zhou also immediately fled. Similarly, not heading upwards. That would be equivalent to seeking death. Even Elderjun and the others did not have the confidence to outrun the tide of coldness, let alone Lin Zhou. Raising his hand, an extremely powerful aura of thunder and lightning suddenly emanated from his body. Within the extreme darkness, a strange silvery white thunder light suddenly lit up before mightily striking the layer of ice in front of Lin Zhou, breaking it apart. Lin Zhou decisively rushed within. At the final moment, Lin Zhou looked somewhat unwillingly in the direction where Yan Zhaoge had previously been. He saw that Yan Zhaoge and the underground splitting shuttle, obstructed by the reversed Yin-Yang Mother World, were moving rather slowly as they had still yet to completely enter the layer of ice at this time. While the attacks of Elderjun, Zheng Shuo, and the others were no longer there, the ice blue light had already caught up to Yan Zhaoge. Even you have such a day. Lin Zhou's gaze was cold, excitement flickering within. Within the underground splitting shuttle, Yan Zhaoge felt something as he swiveled his head upwards, just happening to meet Lin Zhou's gaze. Vaguely seeing the emotions revealed within Lin Zhou's gaze, Yan Zhaoge smiled, neither hurriedly nor slowly taking out the earth-devouring burner once more. Then, under Lin Zhou's furious gaze, Yan Zhaoge blocked the incoming tide of coldness with the earth-devouring burner before leisurely entering the layer of ice. The next moment, the tide of coldness surged madly, shooting upwards to the surface of the earth, burying all those who had not been able to escape in time within the ice cave. It was like a massive ice coffin, an extremely cold graveyard. To be continued. Chapter 343. The balance had been broken, and the ice pith vein was in an extremely violent state. It would not be easy to restore the balance. While Yan Zhaoge had the earth-devouring burner to help him obstruct the devouring, it was also not good for him to continue staying where he was. He immediately controlled the underground splitting shuttle to traverse the frozen earth and get far away. Behind him, the raging waves of extreme cold chased after him, causing the layer of ice to harden and expand outwards. Only after having fled for a long distance did Yan Zhaoge feel the cold tides behind him gradually subside. Who also sat in the underground splitting shuttle, looking back with lingering fear. Young master, will such a huge change in the ice pith vein affect your plans? Hearing his words, Yan Zhaoge said, "It's fine. We just happen to make use of this final move to maximize its effects. With the current situation, it's already sufficient. As for the southern wasteland, we just have to wait." Yan Zhaoge drove the underground splitting shuttle upwards, leaving the surface of the ground as he landed on the extreme northern snowy plains once more. He turned around and looked in the direction of the ice cave just now, only to see that there was still a blue light that shot into the sky. Although it had begun to recede and return to calmness, he could still feel the terrifying power of nirvanic extermination. Yan Zhaoge clicked his tongue in admiration. The majestic power of the heavens and the earth truly leaves one gasping in amazement. Ahu asked, "Young master, what should we do now? Should we return to the blue hot spring that was used to save Shijun and his mother?" Yan Zhaoge shook his head. "It's still not time." Counting the days, that place still needs some time to accumulate spiritual chi. While the eruption of the ice pith vein buried most of the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners just now, there are still experts of the Heavenly Thunder Hall who are still alive. That martial grandmaster of Black Nightmare Mountain seems to have escaped with his life. Previously, we all sought our own paths of survival and escaped in different directions. Now that we've lost track of each other, they will most likely continue to search for us in this area, so it's best that we don't continue to stay here. Yen Zhaoge smiled, seeing a certain someone just now proved some things from another perspective. Who was somewhat surprised. Young master, Yen Zhaoge led the way towards the west. That direction was precisely the direction from which they had come. Over there was the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint, as well as the gathered Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners. However, with most of the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners having been buried by Yen Zhaoge within the ice cave, the power guarding the legacy site was inevitably much weaker than before. What exactly had been left behind by the glacial dragon martial saint? Yen Zhaoge had not previously been certain, only having some guesses. However, with a Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioner appearing here, especially with Lin Zhou himself having come all the way to the extreme northern snowy plains, Yen Zhaoge understood that the significance of this legacy site would not be light. According to Yen Zhaoge's guesses of Lin Zhou, when searching for treasures, this brother would never do so without thinking. In other words, this was a master who wouldn't release the eagle until he saw the rabbit. Since he appeared here, it meant that there was really something good. Since that was so, how could Yen Zhaoge possibly let go of the initiative due to Yi Jing? Moreover, the Heavenly Thunder Hall had split their forces into two, diluting their strength in the extreme north. Due to the eruption of the ice pith vein, more than half of those who had come to the ice cave to find trouble for Yen Zhaoge had perished. Currently, with the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners guarding the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint, Yen Zhaoge didn't mind going there. The matter of the southern underground palace having already come to an end, it only had to wait for time to ferment. With the conditions for saving Shijun and his mother still not fulfilled, the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint entered Yen Zhaoge's line of sight. Weakening the enemy and strengthening oneself were both paths that could be fought for. At this time, returning to the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint would also be the most suitable time. Afterwards, whether they succeeded or failed, they would quickly leave. This way, they would be able to shift the enemy, making it hard for them to discern their true intentions. Speaking of this Lin Zhou, having not seen him for some time, it looks like he has gained quite a bit again, even having something like the yin-yang mother world appear. Yen Zhaoge stroked his lower chin. The silvery white thunder that broke through the frozen earth of the ice cave also feels somewhat familiar. I seem to have heard of it before. What is it? As Yen Zhaoge thought, he narrowed his eyes into slits. Lin Zhou, heading west, after many days of trekking, the figures of the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners appeared before Yen Zhaoge, and Ahu once more. The immortal crane wings expanded behind Yen Zhaoge's back, advancing rapidly as he instantly slew several Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners on the outskirts. Guarding this place were also two early Essence Spirit martial grandmaster experts of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Having been alerted, having received the warning of Yen Zhaoge's impending attack, they immediately rushed over. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoge's expression was heavy, the purplish-green light of thunder flickering within his right eye. The next moment, a purple orb hovered above his head. It was precisely formed of a fragment of the sacred artifact, the Eye of the Thunder Emperor. The light of thunder flickered, resembling the blink of the god of thunder. The terrifying and instant thunder descended once more, violent thunderbolts ripping through space. An early essence spirit martial grandmaster was completely unable to evade as the bright, violent light of thunder arrived before him, devouring him. The other person was unable to save him in time as he was greatly enraged, rushing towards Yen Zhaoga. The other person's figure flickered, also resembling the light of thunder as he instantly vanished before Yen Zhaoga's eyes. Even with Yen Zhaoga's vision, he found it hard to track him. The terrifying light of thunder first lit up, followed by the great rumbling of thunder. A saber light lit up between the heavens and the earth, resembling divine, thunder descending from the heavens as it hacked towards Yen Zhaoga. Yen Zhaoga, however, was not panicked as he raised his hand, a short stone rod flying out, expanding within the air as it instantly transformed into a tall pillar of the divine palace. The saber light that resembled thunder chopped down on the pillar of the divine palace. As it shook, numerous streaks of light extended in all directions. Those streaks of light formed numerous spirit patterns which intersected between the heavens and the earth, actually forming a massive formation with the pillar of the divine palace as its center. Suppressed by the formation, the light of thunder instantly dimmed and calmed. The massive stone pillar descended from the heavens, the formation enveloping the surrounding area as it directly suppressed that essence spirit martial grandmaster of the heavenly thunder hall beneath it. The other party's expression changed slightly as he wanted to evade, yet felt as though his figure had been locked in place, unable to move. The speed that he was so proud of had lost its use now, as he could only grit his teeth and forcibly resist. The expression on this essence spirit martial grandmaster's face was ugly as he raised his palms, blocking the descending pillar of the divine palace. Yen Zhaoga, however, did not get entangled with him as he grabbed Ahu with one hand, expanding his immortal crane wings and raising his speed to the maximum, instantly leaving the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners behind. Some other Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners tried to obstruct him, but Yen Zhaoga's immortal crane wings shook, the feathers at the tips of his wings transforming into numerous feathers of light, shooting towards them like a tempestuous storm. After breaking through their defenses, Yen Zhaoga waved his hands, the pillar of the divine palace rising once more as it shrunk in size, reverting to the form of a short stone rod as it returned to Yen Zhaoga's hands. Yen Zhaoga's footsteps did not halt in the slightest as the wings behind him shook, drawing a graceful arc through the air as he dove into the ice lake where the legacy site of the glacial dragon martial saint was located. To be continued. Chapter 344. Landing within the icy lake, they could clearly feel a bone-piercing chill assaulting their entire bodies. However, as compared to the terror of the ice pith vein earlier, it was still inferior. As Yen Zhaoga and Ahu dove downwards, the aura chi around Yen Zhaoga's body fluctuated, vaguely resonating with the restrictions of the icy lake. Numerous white rings of light expanded within the lake, surging unceasingly. Streams of cold chi surged from within the white light, freezing the lake water in its depths, causing the white light to gradually take tangible form. Amidst the surging undercurrents at the bottom of the lake, a simple, unadorned, majestic ice palace appeared out of nowhere, looking rather majestic. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoga and Ahu could not help but click their tongues in wonder. The sound of entering the water resounded from behind as the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners had already caught up. The face of that essence spirit martial grandmaster, who had been obstructed by the pillar of the divine palace earlier, was livid as he took the lead. Before he had even entered the water, violent attacks had already first arrived in pursuit of Yen Zhaoga, and Ahu, a terrifying thunder dragon, rushed into the water, roaring as countless arcs of electricity expanded within the icy lake, resembling a net as they spread out in all directions. Trillions of leaping snakes of electricity traversed the water, chasing after Yen Zhaoga and Ahu. The violent arcs of thunder exploded unceasingly within the water, even generating high temperatures as the cold chi within the icy lake was no longer as dense as before. This essence spirit martial grandmaster himself also entered the water, a mid-grade spirit artifact saber in his hands, rampaging as violent thunderbolts came one after another, resembling a torrential storm as they hacked down towards Yen Zhaoga and Ahu. As the thunder rampaged, the other Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners who had entered the icy lake in pursuit all felt their bodies slightly numb. Yen Zhaoga didn't even look back, the miraculous immortal crane wings able to accelerate even within the water as he shot towards the ice palace at the bottom of the lake at his greatest speed. When he and Ahu landed near the ice palace, numerous white patterns of light flickered on its surface, forming a barrier which instantly blocked the pursuing thunder light. Yen Zhaoga came before the great door of the ice palace, pressing his palm on its surface, his aura chi infusing within. On the great door, where Yen Zhaoga's palm was pressed, with his palm as the center, a four-pronged pattern of around a meter instantly appeared. As the pattern flickered, Yen Zhaoga's entire person seemed about to merge within the cold ice, gradually beginning to disappear. The pursuing Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners were all greatly anxious. That essence spirit martial grandmaster went all out, chopping towards Yen Zhaoga with his saber. However, the white light patterns around the ice palace shook with a loud rumble, like a giant beast that had been enraged from its slumber. After blocking the lightning blade light, it set off a rolling cold wave and counterattacked. This Heavenly Thunder Hall elder immediately felt that he was unable to withstand it, as he could only helplessly retreat. However, as the cold wave swept across, the entire lake seemed to be on the verge of freezing into ice. As the ice and snow spread, the Heavenly Thunder Hall elder did not dare to hesitate in the slightest as he roared loudly, dropping his mid-grade spirit artifact saber, making use of his instantaneous explosive force to break free of the bindings of the ice and snow. Only then did he make use of this chance to charge out of the surface of the ice lake, not being completely sealed within. Meanwhile, the other Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners were all scrambling to escape from the ice lake at this time, only hating their parents for giving them two legs as they ran too slowly. Being at the bottom of the lake, Yen Zhaoga and Ahu were not affected in the least. Yen Zhaoga pressed his palm on the great door of the ice palace, his figure gradually merging within. He brought Ahu into the ice palace with him. After entering the ice palace, Yen Zhaoga did not immediately advance, instead halting as he first carefully observed his surroundings. The ice palace was tall, its overall architectural style also appearing broad and broad. On the walls, there was a lifelike coiling dragon sculpture. Carefully looking at the ice dragon sculpture, Yen Zhaoga's eyes gradually narrowed into slits. Genuine dragon chi, the glacial dragon martial saints rise to prominence. Other than the legacies of before the Great Calamity, is indeed inseparable from the dragon race. Appraising the ice palace, feeling the spiritual chi flow within, Yen Zhaoga muttered to himself, "This is not the burial ground of the glacial dragon martial saint, but more like his old residence." Ahu asked, "Young master, the glacial dragon martial saint should be one of the earliest martial saints of the 8 extremities world after the Great Calamity, when the martial Tao was re-established, right?" Yen Zhaoga nodded. "That's right, a person of the same era as our clan's founder, the heaven-opening old man, and one of the first batch of martial saint experts of the 8 extremities world after the Great Calamity. It's just that he was not like our clan's founder, the heaven-opening old man, who established a new foundation for the martial Tao of the 8 extremities world. The glacial dragon martial saint was used to being a loner, seldom interacting with others of the world, also not leaving behind any martial legacies. His life and death are a mystery, his whereabouts a mystery as he appeared briefly in history. However, this cannot obscure his legend. In the 8 extremities world of after the Great Calamity, he was indeed a top figure. Crossing his hands before his chest, Yen Zhaoge looked at the ice palace before him. It is precisely because there are too many mysteries that many people are instead concerned about his whereabouts, wondering what exactly this martial saint expert has gone to do. Sadly, the clues he left behind were too few. It was only in recent years that some traces could be traced. As Yen Zhaoge said this, the information he had previously obtained surfaced within his mind once more. Myriad stars converge, dragons enter the sea, desolate ancient cold abyss, reverse scale shocks moon. This person's whereabouts might be related to even more things. Ceasing his thoughts, Yen Zhaoge strode forward. Let's go. Let us see if there are any valuable things left behind in the old residence of this veteran martial saint. Advancing forward, traversing numerous layers of ice and snow, Yen Zhaoge and Asha arrived at the center of the ice palace. Just having entered, roiling cold qi assaulted their faces. Gazing over carefully, Yen Zhaoge saw a thick ice pillar standing at the center of the palace, seemingly supporting it. Seeing the appearance of the ice pillar clearly, Yen Zhaoge's pupils instantly dilated. The ice pillar was transparent, a massive black shadow sealed within. It was, shockingly, the corpse of a dragon. It was not the skeleton of an ice dragon that had been discovered in the eastern Tang's Luliao mountain range long ago. Instead, it was the complete corpse of a true dragon. Dragon claws, dragon scales, dragon whiskers, dragon tail, everything was present. Other than being lifeless, everything else was complete. Sealed within the ice pillar, it seemed as though it had only fallen into a deep slumber, looking extremely lifelike. Yen Zhaoge smiled. What a fella! Just this thing alone makes this trip not a waste. Who drooled as he looked at it. Young master, it's a real fella. Such a complete dragon in the eight extremities world of after the great calamity, other than the founder of Jade Sea City, who obtained a water dragon's corpse that year. There shouldn't be anyone else like it, right? Yen Zhaoge nodded. That's right, it's precisely so. He looked at their surroundings. While the glacial dragon martial saint's sacred artifact was not left here, being able to obtain the corpse of a true dragon like this is also very beneficial. Yen Zhaoge retracted his mind from the ice pillar, beginning to inspect his surroundings a step further. Within the great hall, there seemed to be a massive throne formed of pure ice, flickering with a lustrous radiance. To be continued. Chapter 345. Looking at that throne of ice, Yen Zhaoge could feel the aura of a crouching tiger and coiling dragon not dissipating for a long time. It was as though he had traversed through time, able to see the scenes of the past. A powerful martial saint sat there just like that, looking at the ice pillar at the center of the great hall. Coming to the side of the throne, Yen Zhaoge turned to look at the great hall at the true dragon's corpse sealed in ice at its center. Ahu calmed down now as well, asking, Young master, the difficulty of collecting this true dragon's corpse has increased. What should we do to bring it away completely? Yen Zhaoge said, You don't have to worry about that. I already have an idea. Let's first check the other things in the ice palace. Ahu agreed, volunteering to search for it. Yen Zhaoge remained where he was, stroking his lower chin as he pondered. When Ahu returned, he saw that their gains had been rather abundant. Having originally already been greatly excited by the true dragon's corpse, Ahu was now smiling to the point where his eyes could not be seen. Because of the long passage of time, many of the things stored in the ice palace had already decayed by now, losing their original value and use. Even so, however, there were still many treasures left behind where the glacial dragon martial saint had once resided, still usable now. As a martial saint expert, the glacial dragon martial saint's personal wealth was still very abundant. While it could not compare to a sacred ground like Broad Creed Mountain in terms of wealth, as a solitary practitioner, he was truly filthy rich. As a fellow martial saint, the collection of the Devil Saint Yuan Tian was much inferior. After inspecting the items, Yan Zhaoge felt even more confident. Right, from the looks of it, when the glacial dragon martial saint returned to this place for the last time before leaving, he did not seem to have been in a hurry. In his mind, perhaps it was just a relatively ordinary outing. At the very least, he did not expect that he would never return. Yan Zhaoge pondered. Perhaps he went to explore that so-called dragon's entering the sea secret, vanishing from there, his life and death a mystery. Thinking of this, Yan Zhaoge began searching through the treasures of the ice palace, once more searching for possible clues. Finally, a few shattered scales drew Yan Zhaoge's attention. Dragon scales. While the spiritual qi within the scales had already gradually dissipated, Yan Zhaoge was still able to identify them very quickly. Walking to the ice pillar at the center of the Great Hall, Yan Zhaoge carefully observed that true dragon corpse sealed within before looking at the shattered scale in his hand. It's not from this dragon. After piecing the scales back together, there might be some gains. Yan Zhaoge stopped thinking before raising his head to look at the massive ice pillar before him. Extending his hand and pressing down on the ice pillar, feeling the cold aura within, Yan Zhaoge closed his eyes. A moment later, he took out the pillar that had turned into a short stone rod. The pillar of the divine palace became huge again, and together with the icicle, they supported the ice palace. Yan Zhaoge pressed both his hands on the ice pillar that sealed the true dragon's body, infusing his aura qi within. With his hands as the center, a four-sided pattern appeared. As they intertwined with each other, light patterns began to appear on the ice pillars. Yan Zhaoge retracted a palm, retrieving a pair of silver rings from the things left behind by the glacial dragon martial saint. With a light flick of his fingers, the two silver rings flew out, one above and one below. The silver rings that flew upwards landed where the ice pillar touched the top of the Great Hall, while the silver rings that flew downwards landed at the foundation of the ice pillar on the ground below. The two silver rings also transformed into rings of silvery white light, slowly merging within the ice pillar, vanishing. Yan Zhaoge pressed his hands on the ice pillar once more, next his aura qi surging in reverse as he sucked on the ice pillar. The massive ice pillar that had still seemed inseparable from the great hall of the ice palace earlier shuddered now, actually gradually being moved by Yan Zhaoge. Amidst the friction, a great amount of shattered ice descended from above, the ice pillar becoming a little smaller. Yan Zhaoge exerted force downwards, causing the ice pillar to topple horizontally. The ice pillar was densely covered with silvery white light patterns, flickering with radiance unceasingly. The true dragon corpse sealed within remained unmoving, as though in a deep slumber. Yan Zhaoge tried to store this massive ice pillar within his shadow-shrinking pouch. However, an extremely powerful aura suddenly surged from within the ice pillar that had previously been quiet, even seeming rather ordinary, terrifying to the extreme. The ferocious spiritual force resisted entering the shadow-shrinking pouch, virtually wanting to rip it apart. Extraordinary indeed. Yan Zhaoge's expression did not change as he lightly patted the pillar of the divine palace beside him. The pillar of the divine palace shrunk slightly before, under Yan Zhaoge's control, descending onto the ice pillar. The powerful aura within the ice pillar finally calmed somewhat. Yan Zhaoge immediately sent the pillar of the divine palace and the true dragon corpse into the shadow-shrinking pouch. On the other side, having also kept the other things, Yan Zhaoge said, "Let's go." Without even having to think, he knew that the people of the Heavenly Thunder Hall were currently waiting outside the Ice Palace, outside the Ice Lake. It was very likely that the Heavenly Thunder Hall's Elder Zhen and the others who had been at the Ice Pith Vein earlier had also hurried back at top speed. Over at the Ice Pith Vein, having caused the Heavenly Thunder Hall to suffer disastrous losses in their manpower in the extreme northern lands, it might not be impossible for the Heavenly Thunder Hall to send reinforcements over from the Thunder Domain. However, this did not pose a problem for Yen Zhaoge. Exiting the Ice Palace, he did not leave the Ice Lake, instead taking out the underground splitting shuttle and entering the depths of the lake, leaving from underground. Within the underground splitting shuttle, looking at the numerous cracks on its surface, Yen Zhaoge smacked his lips. Over at the ice pit vein earlier, the pressure was still a little great. The damage to the underground splitting shuttle was also rather severe, even worse than in Old Man Great Sorrow's tomb earlier. Who was even more shocked. Young master, it wouldn't have broken down in the middle of the journey, right? Then we would have been buried underground. Yen Zhaoge chuckled. Relax, it's at least enough to complete this journey. Very quickly, the underground splitting shuttle shot out of the ground, the two seeing the light of day once more. Yen Zhaoge kept the underground splitting shuttle gazing back amidst the all-encompassing snowstorm. The snowy plains of the extreme northern lands were vast and desolate. While this place is rather close to the Thunder Domain, at the end of the day, it is not the territory of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Yen Zhaoge shook his head. While Lin Zhou and the others might not recognize the underground splitting shuttle, they should still know that he had this unique treasure. However, other than guarding the ice lake, they also didn't have much of a choice. Their manpower was far from enough to spread out in all directions, completely surrounding the surrounding area. Controlling the underground splitting shuttle, he could choose any direction underground, which was extremely convenient. To the martial practitioners of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, finding a way to open the Ice Palace as soon as possible was still a little more realistic. Yen Zhaoge said to let's go. Pay attention to clearing away our tracks, lest we be followed. The two headed east once more, hurrying towards that blue hot spring they had discovered earlier. Calculating the time, Yen Zhaoge estimated that the spiritual qi there should already have accumulated enough. After many days of trekking, returning to their old home, Yen Zhaoge broke through the ice and frozen earth once more, the blue hot spring that emanated steam, once more appearing before them. Yen Zhaoge took out an object that resembled a transparent crystal, throwing it into the blue hot spring. Instantly, the hot spring began to boil even more. At the same time, its blue light faded completely, turning blood red. To be continued. Chapter 346. The transparent crystalline object was known as the glazed heart, having been refined by Yen Zhaoge using various treasures as raw materials through the internal crystal furnace. And before him, the originally blue hot spring was known as the time connection spring, being extremely rare, only having the possibility of being born in extremely cold places. The time connection spring possessed limitless miraculous aspects, being especially renowned for its abundant life force. However, this was an underground spring, its spiritual qi retracted and not apparent, being very hard for most people to find. The birth of the spring was also a result of the creation of the heavens and the earth, being hard to obtain, as one had to rely on luck. In coming to the extreme, northern, snowy plains this time, one of Yen Zhaoge's main goals was to be able to find such a time connection spring. This strange hot spring held a very important place in Yen Zhaoge's plan to save Shijun and Ing Yuzhen. The spiritual qi contained within the time connection spring rose and fell like the tides, rising and falling in a regular pattern. After reaching its peak, it would fall, and after reaching the bottom, it would flourish once more. Previously, when Yen Zhaoge and Ahu had broken through the ground and seen the spirit spring, feeling the spiritual qi within, Yen Zhaoge had determined that the spiritual qi of this spirit spring had yet to reach its peak. Under such circumstances, the spiritual qi of the spring was unable to support Yen Zhaoge's plan. Therefore, Yen Zhaoge could only seal it up before first doing other things. counting the days. The spiritual chi of the spring should have reached its peak soon. Looking again this time, Yen Zhaoge indeed found that the spiritual chi contained within this time connection spring was much more abundant than before. After throwing the glazed heart into the spring water turned from its original blue to red, a dark red like blood. In this world of ice and snow, the hot spring boiled even more, roiling steam rising, as it also appeared to be the color of blood. Yen Zhaoge carefully stared at the blood-red spirit spring, feeling the spiritual chi within. After calculating for a moment, he couldn't help but knit his brows slightly, a heavy haze appearing within his gaze. Observing his expression, Hu asked carefully, "Young master, is there a problem?" Yen Zhaoge didn't hide it from him, frowning as he said, "The spiritual chi contained within this time connection spring, converted into the blood chi of rejuvenation for healing, is a little, the spiritual chi of the time connection spring itself could not be used in Yen Zhaoge's plan. However, through special means, the spiritual chi in the spring water could be converted into blood chi, which could produce astonishing effects. While it might not be able to revive the dead, it was not far from it. But there was a problem in this. Different time-link springs had different conversion rates of spiritual energy into blood chi. Some were higher, some were lower. What made Yen Zhaoge feel rather unlucky was that this time connection spring that he had found belonged to the category with a rather low conversion rate. "I'm afraid it's only enough for one person." After silently calculating, Yen Zhaoge came to a general conclusion. Sister-in-law Yuzhen's situation is even worse. If we use it on her, it might not even be enough. If I use it on little June, there's a 90% chance that he'll wake up. If I use it on sister-in-law Yuzhen, her life won't be in danger, but whether she can wake up or not will depend on God. But I'm afraid sister-in-law Yuzhen can't wait any longer. Yen Zhaoge rubbed his temples. "Think carefully, is there any other way?" Hu also frowned and said, "Young master, why don't we bury it here and go to other places to see if there are other time connection springs? With the size of the extreme northern snowy plains, we might be able to find one." Yen Zhaoge shook his head slowly, surveying the desolate snowy plains around them. While this place is vast, nurturing a time connection spring is not easy. Under normal circumstances, only after this hot spring has dried up and a few years have passed will nature birth a new spirit spring once more. The problem is that it is hard to say whether June, and sister-in-law Yuzhen will be able to wait that long. Yen Zhaoge had brought along 2 shadow shrinking pouches, one of which was specially left empty, only containing 2 things. They were the ice coffins containing Ying Yuzhen and Shi Jun's bodies. Yen Zhaoge silently took out the 2 ice coffins from the shadow shrinking pouch, looking at the faces of the 2 who seemed to be in deep slumber within. "Young master, if we really can't do it, we should first save sister-in-law Yuzhen," Hu said softly from the side. "Otherwise, as you say, sister-in-law Yuzhen might not be able to wait till the birth of a second time connection spring." His hands crossed before his chest. Yen Zhaoge looked earnestly at the hot spring down below that had turned blood red. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Let's give it a try. The situation might be better than I think." Saying thus, Yen Zhaoge opened the lids of the 2 ice coffins. As the seal of the ice coffins was released, while Shi Jun's condition was still passable, signs of weakness instantly appeared on Ying Yuzhen's face. Yen Zhaoge's expression did not change as he swept the bodies of Shi Jun and his mother with his aura chi, bringing them out of the ice coffins amidst the howling cold wind. His aura chi seemed even colder than the cold wind, as it was all white, under the effect of Yen Zhaoge's aura chi. While the faces of Shi Jun and his mother were still very pale, the signs of weakness had already disappeared. Yen Zhaoge said, "Do you still remember what I taught you earlier?" Hu answered earnestly, "Rest easy, young master. I remember it all." Yen Zhaoga nodded, no longer saying anything. Drawing on his aura qi, he placed Shi Jun and Ing Yuzhen's bodies together within the blood-red hot spring. On the other side, Ahu took out 2 long poles. At the top of each pole was a golden lamp. The ends of the 2 poles were sent together into the time connection spring down below. The poles floated within the spring water, just like that, not slanting or sinking. Shi Jun and Ing Yuzhen's bodies instead completely sunk into the spring water, completely submerged within it. Controlling the 2 poles carefully with his aura qi, Ahu let the 2 poles hover above the bodies of Shi Jun and his mother, respectively. Feeling the spiritual qi fluctuations within, Yen Zhaoga flicked his fingers, the golden lamps at the top of the 2 poles instantly lighting up. The light of the fire appeared a strange silvery white, shining together with the golden lamps, emitting a bright radiance which bobbed and sank within the blood-red spring water. The ends of the poles were submerged within the water, each projecting a ray of light which was aimed directly at the chests of Shi Jun and Ing Yuzhen within the spring water. As the ray of light landed on their bodies, Shi Jun and his mother instantly shuddered. While they were still completely unaware, some color seemed to have returned to their faces. Yen Zhaoga's expression was solemn as he formed a fist with his left hand, his right palm striking downwards from afar. The spring water of the blood-red spirit spring actually began to circulate, gradually forming the shape of a whirlpool. However, the bodies of the 2 beneath the water, as well as those 2 poles, did not move at all as they stood stably within the water. Yen Zhaoga quietly observed the situation of this blood-red spring water, as well as the mother and son beneath the water, his hands alternating as aura qi descended one after another, carefully making adjustments. As time passed, the blood-red color of the spring water gradually grew faint. Yen Zhaoga worked day and night, focusing on the ritual within the spring water. Ahu stood by the side, quietly standing guard. One day, just as another night had passed, the first rays of dawn surfacing once more, Ahu's expression suddenly changed slightly. In the distance, a black storm suddenly arose, obscuring the heavens and obscuring the sun. Yen Zhaoga now raised his head and gazed over, his eyes narrowing into slits. It's that essence spirit, martial grandmaster of Black Nightmare Mountain. Unlike those of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, he is not concerned about the legacy of the glacial dragon martial saint, instead hoping to find me again, specifically finding trouble with us. Chapter 347. Looking at the black hurricane that was growing fiercer and fiercer in the distance, Yen Zhaoga sucked in a deep breath. Ahu, hover in the air above the lantern, using your aura qi to suppress the ritual. Ahu glanced somewhat worriedly into the distance, but still did as Yen Zhaoga instructed. He hovered above the spring, his aura qi surging as he sat in the air above the 2 golden lanterns propped up by 2 long poles. A black hurricane also appeared on Ahu's body, containing a faint purple qi within as it enveloped the time connection spring in the west. Yen Zhaoga walked towards the black hurricane that was sweeping over from the distance. Within the black hurricane, the figure of an old man was indistinctly visible, his face sunken. It was precisely the remnant elder of Black Nightmare Mountain, Zheng Shua. Zheng Shua similarly stared fixedly at Yen Zhaoga. He did not head for the ice lake, instead continuing to search for traces of Yen Zhaoga and Ahu in the extreme northern snowy plains. Whether it should be said that his luck was too good, or Yen Zhaoga's luck was too bad, after many days of searching, Zheng Shua had really found the time connection spring. This time, Zheng Shua did not attempt to find anyone else to help him. Earlier, at the ice pith vein, he had seriously thought about it, having exposed his intentions, causing Yen Zhaoga to set up a trap that had nearly buried everyone within the ice cave. While he had not returned to the ice lake, Zheng Shua had also established some contact with the Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners before this, exchanging what they needed. Earlier, he had heard that Yen Zhaoga's sacred artifact fragment had already been used at the ice lake, having expended a great deal of its power. Even if he still had some left over, he would not fear it. Therefore, this time, he wanted to directly make a move, not giving Yen Zhaoga any time to prepare or react. The old man strode through the air, gazing coldly at Yen Zhaoga, his hands forming claws as they clawed downwards. Then, a terrifying black nightmare storm descended from the sky, attacking towards Yen Zhaoga. As the storm rampaged, it seemed to have transformed into a ferocious black tiger, its body 100 feet long as it rampaged between the heavens and the earth, ferocious to the extreme. Yen Zhaoga raised his head to look at the opponent before him. Similarly, using the black nightmare godly wind and the ghost tiger divine claw, Zheng Shuo was much more ferocious than Ahu's. This was an essence spirit martial grandmaster who had already successfully nurtured his true martial soul, having refined his aura qi into essence, becoming ever stronger with age. The full-powered strike of the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment at the ice lake earlier had directly blown a long-time elder of the Heavenly Thunder Hall of the same level as Zheng Shuo into smithereens. At this moment, the pillars of the Divine Palace were suppressing the icicles that sealed the remains of the true dragon. However, Yen Zhaoga himself had already recovered from the depletion caused by wielding an instant's thunder with the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment after so many days. But a martial practitioner at the second level of the martial grandmaster, the spirit vessel middle stage, against an opponent at the fourth level of the martial grandmaster, the essence spirit early stage, under normal circumstances, no matter how one looked at it, it was a hopeless matter. At least, Ahu admitted that he couldn't do it. This opponent was no ordinary martial practitioner. While Black Nightmare Mountain had fallen, its legacy was still one of the peak martial arts of the current Eight Extremities world. Zheng Shuo roared, the ferocious tiger formed of his black, true essence lunging straight towards Yen Zhaoga. The roar of a tiger resounded, its speed swift and ferocious to the extreme, virtually not inferior to longtime elders of the Heavenly Thunder Hall at the same cultivation level. Before it was annihilated, the martial arts of the Black Nightmare Mountain range, besides being imposing and forceful, piercingly cold and swift, was also known for its speed that was swift and violent like the wind. Zheng Shuo's claw strike displayed its characteristics to the fullest. Facing this powerful attack, Yen Zhaoga's expression did not change as his figure abruptly shook. As he shook, Yen Zhaoga's body instantly vanished from the spot. Many martial arts that excelled in speed were currently already in the state of being mastered by Yen Zhaoga. With the peerless heavenly scripture as his foundation, Yen Zhaoga's aura qi was both vigorous and heavy, also domineering and sharp. Under the powerful explosive force, Yen Zhaoga instantly evaded the ferocious black tiger lunging over towards him. Having missed, the ferocious black tiger directly clawed towards Yen Zhaoga from where it stood. Zheng Shuo's expression was cold. He had long since known that Yen Zhaoga's cultivation base far surpassed martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. However, the full power of a spirit vessel martial grandmaster to an essence spirit martial grandmaster like Zheng Shuo was merely something that he could casually do as he pleased. Changing moves after moves, Zheng Shuo moved with ease. What he was actually guarding against was Yen Zhaoga's pillar of the Divine Palace. While Zheng Shuo didn't know what it was, also not understanding the specific situation, having heard that it was an extremely precious treasure, even though it was not as violent as the power of the sacred artifact fragment, he still secretly paid attention to it. But very quickly, he discovered that he had been thinking too much. Before considering treasures like the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment and the Pillar of the Divine Palace, he first had to face Yen Zhaoga's own strength. Faced with Zheng Shua's sudden change in stance, Yan Zhaoge's expression was as calm as ever, executing finger-flicking shocking thunder. Yan Zhaoge's speed of controlling qi and returning it was not any slower than the essence spirit martial grandmaster Zheng Shua in the least. His figure flashed, evading Zheng Shua's attack once more. Treading on the air, his body like lightning, he directly evaded the tiger's claw, instead nearing the black tiger's abdomen. Amidst the roar of a dragon, a jade-green sword light whistled out from Yan Zhaoge's sleeve. Yan Zhaoge merged with his sword, chopping towards the black tiger's abdomen. Zheng Shua was greatly enraged, clawing within the air. The ferocious tiger formed of the black nightmare storm expanded madly, its waist rising as it raised its claw to block Yan Zhaoge's sword light. Yan Zhaoge let out a long breath, the jade-green sword light flickering, suddenly retracting abruptly without any prior warning whatsoever. It was like a divine dragon hiding its head, its tracks hard to find. As Yan Zhaoge's figure spun, he executed the cloud dragon concealed sword with finger-flicking shocking thunder before mightily erupting once more, the divine dragon probing its head. The sword light that was even swifter and more ferocious than before directly chopped down on the vitals of the ferocious black tiger's abdomen. Zheng Shua's gaze was gloomy, his expression even more solemn. Geniuses were able to surpass levels in battle, even if it was a legacy at the level of a sacred ground. In the hands of different people, it would also possess different levels of power. Born of Black Nightmare Mountain, Zheng Shua, who was used to seeing geniuses and outstanding geniuses, naturally understood this. However, he discovered that not only could the Yan Zhaoge before him not be measured by the standards of ordinary people, even the strength of those peak geniuses that he knew of was insufficient to assess Yan Zhaoge. Zheng Shua discovered that he really could not consider things like the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment or the Pillar of the Divine Palace. Otherwise, before even seeing these treasures, he might actually die here. This remnant elder of Black Nightmare Mountain had an explosive temper, but he did not consider retreating just like this, instead letting out a long roar, a black saber abruptly appearing within his hands. As his saber descended, roiling black winds swept throughout the entire sky, enveloping Zheng Shua's body before chopping down towards Yan Zhaoge. The black hurricane was completely condensed and compressed, transforming into a streak of black light that instantly traversed the sky, arriving before Yan Zhaoge. Where the black light passed, the surrounding heavens and earth suddenly turned completely silent, the winds and clouds dissipating. It was only because where the saber passed, everything, including the air itself, was swept within it along with it. Targeted by the saber, Yan Zhaoge found it even more difficult for his body to move, as though he had been sucked in by a powerful suction force, locked where he was, only able to receive this saber head-on. On the time connection spring, Ahu looked nervously at Yan Zhaoge. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly as he swiveled his head to look in another direction. In the distance, amidst the snowstorm, a youth with a gloomy expression held a bow that flickered with purple light. At this moment, an arrow was nocked, currently aimed in this direction. The Heavenly Thunder Hall's Lin Zhou, moving together with Zheng Shua, he had not returned to the ice lake. To be continued. Chapter 348. Lin Zhou did not approach the time connection spring. From a great distance away, he drew a longbow that flickered with the purple light of thunder. An arrow knocked on it as he aimed it at Yan Zhaoge. This bow was named Heaven Shocker, a high-grade spirit artifact. Even in a sacred ground like the Heavenly Thunder Hall, high-grade spirit artifacts were also extremely limited. Martial Grandmaster experts of the Essence Talisman realm and above, as well as the clan's higher echelons, could only barely obtain one each. Because Heaven Shocker was a bow, the situation was rather special. Before this, This high-grade spirit artifact had been held by Lin Zhou's father, Lin Tianfeng. Lin Tianfeng had used it to shoot the anti-sun to disrupt Broad Creed Mountain's Clear Qi Grand Formation. Afterwards, before heading to Broad Creed Mountain, he had left this bow with Lin Zhou for safekeeping. With the tacit approval of the Hall Lord Shun Li, Lin Zhou had never handed this high-grade spirit artifact over, keeping it for himself. Feeling the pressure from Heaven Shocker, Yan Zhaoge also discovered Lin Zhou. Perhaps it should be said that it was as he had expected. Lin Zhou's rate of improvement had also been extremely fast. After the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain, he had also just entered the martial Grandmaster realm. In terms of age, Lin Zhou also surpassed those of the same generation. Having just entered the martial Grandmaster realm, Lin Zhou was unable to fully exert the power of a high-grade spirit artifact. However, a high-grade spirit artifact was a high-grade spirit artifact at the end of the day, far from being comparable to mid-grade and low-grade spirit artifacts. Lin Zhou drew Heaven Shocker. The arrow knocked on the bowstring also extraordinary. As a cold light flickered, Yan Zhaoge seemed to already feel a slight chill on his back. A wild saber in front, a cold arrow behind. Zheng Shuo executed Black Nightmare Mountain's direct lineage martial art, the baleful black divine saber. Infinite black nightmare storms agglomerated, the saber light resembling a black hole as it descended towards Yan Zhaoge. Lin Zhou abruptly released his grip, the purple light of Heaven Shocker exploding. As the bowstring vibrated, it seemed as though thunder had exploded, shocking the heavens and shaking the earth as a purple rainbow instantly arrived before Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge's gaze hardened slightly as he abruptly sucked in a deep breath. The aura qi within his body that resembled chaos changed once more at this moment. But it wasn't like before, where it turned into ice or raging fire. The sizzling sound of electric currents seemed to pierce through the air. The dense thunder and lightning were like dancing golden snakes, replacing the first rays of dawn and illuminating the last darkness before dawn. Yan Zhaoge's aura qi transformed completely into violent thunderbolts and lightning, enveloping his entire body. From his bosom, a pearl that looked like an ordinary stone pearl appeared. It was the slumbering eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment. Under the stimulation of a large amount of lightning, although the essence and power of the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment did not recover, a powerful consciousness seemed to have awakened within it, revealing a terrifying concept that could shake the heavens and earth. As the fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor landed on the tip of Yan Zhaoge's sword, Yan Zhaoge emerged as one with his sword, executing the clouds, rising soaring dragon of the coiling dragon sleeve, soaring into the skies. His entire person seemed to have transformed into a giant bolt of lightning that pierced through the heavens and the earth. Like a shocking thunder dragon, it roared angrily. Thunderclouds surfaced within the sky as true heavenly thunder was drawn over by Yan Zhaoge, descending and merging with his power. Numerous electric pythons and thunder dragons roared furiously, and huge thunderbolts revolved around his body. A heavenly dragon seemed to be faintly discernible in the void. With a shake of its scales, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The roaring thunder dragon soared, easily shattering the restraining force exerted by Zheng Shuo's baleful black divine saber, at the same time jolting away the purple light of electricity that Lin Zhou shot towards him, finally clashing head-on with Zheng Shuo's baleful black divine saber. The black saber light exploded mightily, once more shattering into numerous black hurricanes. Thunder and lightning surged in all directions, a jade-green sword light lighting up. Amidst the splattering of blood, Zheng Shuo stumbled backwards in retreat. The combination of Cloud's rising soaring dragon and an instant's thunder. Cloud Dragon's instant wielding thunder sword. The power of a single sword. unstoppable as it seemed to be able to shatter all obstructions. Looking at this scene from afar, Lin Zhou clenched his teeth. Every time he saw the eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment release its brilliance within Yan Zhaoga's hands, he would feel extremely despondent. Yan Zhaoga transformed into the light of thunder, soaring within the skies like a dragon, his speed rising to a whole new level, while the Cloud Dragon's instant-wielding thunder sword consumed a great deal of strength. With the support of the peerless heavenly scripture and finger-flicking shocking thunder, Yan Zhaoga was able to consecutively use this powerful martial art, its power domineering, its speed also rising to a whole new level. Having been injured by Yan Zhaoga, Zheng Shua's ferocity was stimulated as his violent saber light descended once more. In the hands of an Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster, mid-grade spirit artifacts exerted their full power, displaying shocking power that was sufficient to suppress low-grade spirit artifacts. If not for the augmentation of the concept of the Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment, if not for Yan Zhaoga's Cloud Dragon's instant-wielding thunder sword being too powerful, Zheng Shua would have been able to hack apart the Jade Dragon Sword with a single saber. Lin Zhou's hands did not cease as he drew back Heaven Shocker, once more knocking a thunder, rumbling arrow. The tip of the arrow no longer attempted to aim at Yan Zhaoga, instead shooting towards the mouth of the Time Connection spring on the snowy ground. Lin Zhou's second arrow was aimed directly at the Time Connection spring, and who sat in the meditative position within the air, his expression stern as the lightning that struck over caused his entire face to be illuminated purple. However, he just couldn't move or evade. Within the spring below, the golden lanterns were still bright, the bodies of the mother and son still silent. At this moment, it was hard even for Ahu to parry or resist, his entire body's Orochi being used to maintain the spirit spring ritual. At this moment, he could only barely wield his spirit artifact, attempting to forcibly block Lin Zhou's thunder rumbling arrow. On the other side, Zheng Shua also attacked madly, wanting to entangle Yan Zhaoga so that he would not be able to extricate himself. Yan Zhaoga let out a long roar. Merging with his sword light, the thunder dragon formed of him streaking through the air in an arc, instantly landing above the mouth of the spring. Behind him, Zheng Shua's saber light followed him like a shadow, killing over with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Yan Zhaoga seemed not to have realized that Zheng Shua's attack had already arrived behind him as he raised his hand and blocked Lin Zhou's attack with a sword. And as Zheng Shua's saber light neared him, Yan Zhaoga flipped his palm, the earth-devouring burner appearing. Using it as a shield, borrowing its strange devouring power, Yan Zhaoga blocked this blow of Zheng Shua's. Looking at Yan Zhaoga, who seemed like he would never be able to take him down, Lin Zhou let out a loud roar, drawing his bow, once more shooting out another arrow. At the same time, Zheng Shua abruptly changed his stance, his saber light changing directions as the violent, wild winds seemed to instantly transform into a gentle spring breeze, attacking towards Yan Zhaoga from a graceful angle. However, this gentle saber light was even more lethal. The earth-devouring burner was unable to devour on its own, only able to wait for the other party to send it over on their own accord. In the past, Yan Zhaoga had relied on this to obtain this treasure from Zhao Hao. Now, Zheng Shua was also using the same method. At the same time, Lin Zhou's thunder rumbling arrow flew over once more, its target still the mouth of the Time Connection spring, wanting to force Yan Zhaoga to be unable to move, having no choice but to block it. Yan Zhaoga's expression did not change as he exhaled, the earth-devouring burner in his left hand turning, blocking the purple light of thunder. The Jade Dragon sword in his right hand flew out, resembling the roar of a dragon as it transformed into a sword light that shocked the heavens, chopping towards the distant Lin Zhou. At the same time, the lofty mountain armor on his body lit up, the power of his spirit, rhino demonic fist being unleashed. Also, On Yen Zhaoge's body, a bright light that resembled Vajra also flickered. After the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoge had cultivated in yet another supreme martial art of the 8 extreme arts, precisely the Vajra body. 3 layers of defense bolstered his body. Yen Zhaoge forcibly withstood this saber of Zheng Shuo's. Zheng Shuo roared. Unleashing his power to the maximum, the combination of an essence spirit martial grandmaster and a mid-grade spirit artifact being incomparably sharp as it sought to forcibly break through Yen Zhaoge's defenses. To be continued. Chapter 349. An early essence spirit martial grandmaster at the 4th level of the martial grandmaster realm, exerting his full strength to wield a mid-grade spirit artifact, executing a supreme martial art like the baleful black divine saber, would be able to display a shocking power. Yen Zhaoge neither evaded nor blocked it, completely forcibly taking this saber head-on. The pressure that he bore was also not something that could be imagined. Simultaneously executing the spirit rhino demonic fist and the Vajra body, along with the low-grade spirit artifact, the lofty mountain armor, facing this saber, he was still in great danger. The defenses of the lofty mountain armor were broken through. The bright radiance of the Vajra body also turned dim, resembling the shattering of Vajra. Circulating the spirit rhino demonic fist to the maximum, his flesh, blood, and skin gradually resembled that of a primordial rhinoceros somewhat. However, this was Zheng Shuo's full-powered attack. His 3-layer defenses were still forcibly broken through. Yen Zhaoge paid no heed to this, holding the earth-devouring burner with his left hand to block the thunder rumbling arrows shooting over from the distance, his right hand swinging out, the jade dragon sword transforming into a green light, chopping towards the Lin Zhou, who had shot out the cold arrow. The sword light resembled a rainbow, also entwined by streams of electricity, resembling a jade green thunder dragon as it instantly traversed the sky, killing its way before Lin Zhou, continuously drawing the high-grade spirit artifact. Heaven shocker, Lin Zhou was currently nearing the end of his tether. However, he still forcibly exerted all his strength, forcibly drawing the bow for the 4th time. However, just having knocked the thunder-rumbling arrow, before he could even aim, a jade light had already flown before him. His strength nearing depletion, forcibly drawing the high-grade spirit artifact, caused all of Lin Zhou's strength to be focused on Heaven Shocker. At this moment, facing the jade dragon sword that Yen Zhaoge had shot out, he even resembled a statue as he was hard-pressed to move his body to evade. Clenching his teeth, Lin Zhou could only swing Heaven Shocker horizontally before him, blocking the sword light that resembled a jade dragon. Amidst the rumbling sound, purple and green light flickered, filling the entire area. The Sky Shocker in Lin Zhou's hand exploded with astonishing power. Although it was a longbow, as a high-grade spirit weapon, it was able to block the low-grade spirit weapon, the Jade Dragon Sword. However, Lin Zhou himself was also jolted backwards, Heaven Shocker directly falling out of his hands. The longbow, which was flashing with purple lightning, fell to the ground. The lightning snakes that had gone out of control scuttled in all directions, creating deep pits in the snowfield nearby. Ah! A mournful howl resounded in the snowy plains of the far north, as if it was a lone wounded wolf. Lin Zhou fell to the ground and covered his face with one hand, covering one of his eyes. But at the edge of his palm and in between his fingers, fresh blood flowed incessantly, although Shocker had deflected the Jade Dragon Sword. Allowing Lin Zhou to escape death, one of his eyes was still blinded by the sword light. Lin Zhou gasped and struggled to get up from the ground. His remaining eye was wide open and bloodshot. Gazing into the distance with all his might, he saw that Zheng Shuo's saber light had also broken through Yen Zhaoge's defenses, about to hack onto his body. However, before Lin Zhou and Zheng Shuo could rejoice, a golden light suddenly flickered on the surface of Yan Zhaoga's skin. A simple yet profound rune appeared, helping Yan Zhaoga to block Zheng Shua's saber. Yan Zhaoga recited an ancient and awkward-sounding incantation. As the golden light flashed, his entire body was plated with a layer of golden brilliance, making him look like a golden statue. Accompanied by Yan Zhaoga reciting that ancient incantation, the golden radiance on his body grew more concentrated, the rune on his chest becoming clearer and more profound. Rays of golden light spread out, forming a fourth layer of defense, isolating Zheng Shua's saber light outside. Lin Zhou had seen this scene once before. It was precisely Yan Zhaoga's golden talisman body, under the effects of the Essence Spirit Martial Grandmaster Zheng Shua and the mid-grade spirit artifact, the baleful black saber. The golden talisman chi of the golden talisman cursed body was quickly depleted completely, the golden radiance on Yan Zhaoga's body gradually dimming and dissipating. But under continuous attrition, the current Zheng Shua was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and it was difficult for him to continue. Seeing that he was just a step away from slaying Yan Zhaoga, Zheng Shua roared furiously, wanting to exert more force with the baleful black saber within his hands. His face expressionless, Yan Zhaoga opened his mouth and let out a long roar. After he tossed out the jade dragon sword, something suddenly appeared in his empty right hand, a dark green bamboo branch. The bamboo branch was not long and was divided into 3 sections. Yan Zhaoga picked up the bamboo branch, striking towards Zheng Shua's baleful black saber. The bamboo branch that seemed weak, unable to withstand a single blow, which any ordinary person would be able to break, as it struck the mid-grade spirit artifact, the baleful black saber, left Zheng Shua greatly shocked. He saw that a crack had been forcibly formed on his baleful black saber. The mid-grade spirit artifact, the baleful black saber, had a crack formed on it from a bamboo branch. However, he was clearly unable to feel any spiritual chi or power fluctuations from that bamboo branch, while Yan Zhaoga's cultivation far surpassed that of martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. What he had not been able to do even with the low-grade spirit artifact, the jade dragon sword, had actually been done with a single bamboo branch. At this moment, Zheng Shua was simply rendered rather wide-eyed and tongue-tied. He was only dazed for that one instant. He knew that he shouldn't be dazed. With Yan Zhaoga right before him being dazed would be courting death. However, in that instant, he was still unable to suppress his dazed state. Within Zheng Shua's mind, there was no sorrow, no fury. There was only disbelief and absurdity, a feeling of unreality that had no foundation. Disbelief. How was this possible? Too absurd. Zheng Shua forcibly shook off these emotions, forcibly waking himself up. As he regained his wits in an instant, what appeared in his field of vision was Yan Zhaoga having already switched from defense to attack. Raising his right hand, the dark green bamboo branch within his hand shooting straight towards his head. Zheng Shua did not have time to retract his saber as he wielded a low-grade spirit artifact of his to block. His belt lit up with a crimson glow, forming a stream of light that resembled chains as it blocked before him. However, as Yan Zhaoga's dark green bamboo branch descended, it directly broke those crimson chains. That low-grade spirit artifact seemed to let out a mournful wail, actually being directly destroyed. Zheng Shua was rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied. What exactly is this thing, Seeing this scene, amidst his shock, Lin Zhou painfully shut his remaining eye. Not only was he blind in one eye, Lin Zhou also felt that his body was extremely weak, as even standing up was difficult, his entire body hurting to the bone. Just having drawn the 4th arrow of Heaven Shocker, he had been injured by Yan Zhaoga to the point that the force of the arrow had backfired on him. His body, which had originally been exhausted, was instantly injured severely. Glancing at Heaven Shocker, which was still restless and hard to retrieve despite having lost control of its power, Lin Zhou could only bear the pain and turn, speeding away. Heaven's shocker had always been in the hands of Lin Zhou's father, Lin Tianfeng. After Lin Tianfeng had passed away, to Lin Zhou, this bow was no longer just a high-grade spirit artifact. However, at this moment, he had no choice but to give it up. In his current state, he had to retreat immediately. If he did not leave now, he would really never be able to leave again. And above the time connection spring, the dark green bamboo branch in Yan Zhaoga's hand struck down, breaking one of Zheng Shua's low-grade spirit artifacts, before directly striking the crown of Zheng Shua's head. A lofty essence spirit martial grandmaster was instantly beaten by Yan Zhaoga to the point where the heavens and earth were spinning, stars appearing before his eyes. Even though he had already condensed his true essence to defend in time, his skull was still nearly smashed apart by the blow. As the two battled intensely, while Ahu suppressed it with all his might, the time connection spring beneath his feet still began to ripple intensely. Yan Zhaoga sucked in a deep breath, raising the bamboo branch once more, then striking down towards Zheng Shua. To be continued. Chapter 350. The dark green bamboo branch in Yan Zhaoga's hand flickered with purple light as he casually raised it, then brought it down. However, as the dark green silhouette flickered, Zheng Shua saw stars before his eyes. If Yan Zhaoga had suddenly taken out a high-grade spirit artifact, Zheng Shua would not have been caught unawares like this. However, looking left and right at that dark green bamboo branch, other than a faint layer of purple light covering its surface, there was nothing special about it at all. When it had displayed its mighty might, repelling the baleful black saber and breaking Zheng Shua's low-grade spirit artifact, it had still looked completely ordinary and unremarkable, with Zheng Shua not feeling any shocking power within. It was like an ordinary bamboo branch that Yan Zhaoga had casually snapped off from somewhere. However, as Zheng Shua barely retracted his saber to defend, the dark green bamboo branch whipped down on the baleful black saber once more. A crack appeared on the mid-grade spirit artifact, the baleful black saber once more. Yan Zhaoga ignored the fleeing Lin Zhou, glancing at the time connection spring down below, which had been affected intensely, before looking at Zheng Shua before him. Swinging the dark green bamboo branch, it descended once more, leaving Zheng Shua only able to barely raise his saber to parry. Beaten to the point of suffocation, Zheng Shua wanted to fight with his life on the line, attacking Yan Zhaoga, but was blocked by the earth-devouring burner in Yan Zhaoga's left hand. The bamboo branch in Yan Zhaoga's hand descended like a tempestuous storm. After a short while, Zheng Shua suddenly felt the baleful black saber in his hands shudder intensely. The next moment, the saber that was already riddled with cracks finally couldn't bear the burden anymore. As it broke apart, this mid-grade spirit artifact was shockingly also shattered by Yan Zhaoga's dark green bamboo branch. Seeing this scene, Zheng Shua's expression was wooden, clearly already numb from shock. What he cared about was that he was heavily injured, also having lost the baleful black saber, being even less of a match for Yan Zhaoga. Indeed, the dark green bamboo branch in Yan Zhaoga's hand whipped over, directly sending Zheng Shua plummeting downwards, plummeting into the spring water of the time connection spring down below. Seeing this, Ahu was about to stop him. But seeing Yan Zhaoga's gaze, he did not move, still sitting peacefully in the air above the golden light. Yan Zhaoga pursued downwards, a majestic sword light rising, piercing straight through Zheng Shua's body. An essence spirit martial grandmaster had been slain by Yan Zhaoga within this time connection spring. In the instant that Zheng Shua died, in that instant from life to death, the ritual that Yan Zhaoga had set up within the time connection spring circulated to the maximum, transforming a great amount of death chi into life force. This life force wasn't used on Zheng Shua's body. Instead, Under the control of the ritual, it endlessly blessed Shijun, Yunjin, and her son. Zheng Shuo stared wide-eyed, unable to die in peace as he stared at Yan Zhaoge, who was currently similarly within the spring water. Yan Zhaoge's attention was no longer on him. Instead, he was fully focused on activating the ritual. At the same time, he was staring at Shijun and Yunjin. Zheng Shuo's fresh blood flowed into the spring water. How powerful was the qi and blood of an essence spirit martial grandmaster? The rippling spring water seemed to be boiling at this moment. Zheng Shuo's blood disappeared into the time access spring, and then the blue radiance appeared again, quickly turning into a blood-red color. The power of life was continuously channeled into the bodies of the two of them. Although the two of them were still unconscious and seemed to be in a deep sleep, their pale faces gradually faded and became rosier. Shijun's condition was even better. The dejected look on his face had already completely vanished, looking like a jade sculpture, as if he had really just fallen asleep. His mother Yunjin's condition wasn't as good, but it had already improved greatly. When Yan Zhaoge had first seen her lying within the ice coffin, it had really been very hard to call her a living person. From a certain perspective, she had only been half a breath away from being a dead person. Now, it could be confirmed that Yunjin had also finally struggled back from the brink of death. While there was still a long way to go before she could fully recover and wake up, with even Yan Zhaoge not being able to say for sure when she would wake up, at least there was hope once more now. Looking at Shijun and Yunjin, a heartfelt smile appeared on Yan Zhaoge's face. He let out a long breath of turbid air. At this moment, his tense mind finally relaxed. As the blood color within the spring water gradually grew faint, completely vanishing, the lights on the two poles were also extinguished. Yan Zhaoge extended his hand, keeping the two poles before sweeping Shijun and Yunjin with his aura qi, rising up from the spring water together. Lowering his head, the spring water was already no longer emitting steam, its temperature also cooling down. The spiritual qi of this time connection spring had already been depleted. Yan Zhaoge carefully inspected the condition of Shijun and his mother. Little Shijun's condition was extremely good, as though he might awaken at any time, while his mother Yunjin's condition was a little worse. At least Yan Zhaoge didn't have to worry about her passing away at any time. This way, he could slowly think of other methods to save her. Looking at these two faces that were somewhat familiar yet also somewhat foreign, Yan Zhaoge sighed softly, reopening the two ice coffins, placing the bodies of Shijun and his mother within. Not only did the ice coffins have a sealing effect, they could also nourish their qi and blood at the same time. Placing Yunjin's body within, it would be convenient for her to continue recuperating, awaiting further treatment. And Shijun's body within the ice coffin would also not be a problem. When Shijun awoke on his own, Yan Zhaoge, who was keeping the ice coffin, would be able to sense it. Before that, while Shijun himself did not know anything, he would still be nourished by the ice coffin. Closing the lid of the ice coffin once more, Yan Zhaoge touched the surface of the ice coffin, clicking his tongue. It actually succeeded. It was better than I had expected. Originally, because the spiritual qi within the spring water was insufficient, he had expected that it would only be enough to save one person. When Zheng Shuo and Lin Zhou had attacked, Yan Zhaoge had suddenly had a wonderful idea. In the end, being able to save both Shijun and Yunjin at the same time, to Yan Zhaoge, it could also be considered a pleasant surprise. Looking at the already dead Zheng Shuo at the mouth of the spring below, Yan Zhaoge shook his head slightly, stomping his foot as the soil and rocks above the mouth of the spring collapsed together, burying the mouth of the spring once more. On the other side, Ahu had already arrived a distance away, keeping Yan Zhaoge's jade dragon sword. Keeping the two ice coffins properly, Yen Zhaoga came over to Ahu's side, retrieving his jade dragon sword before gazing at the snowy plains before him. There, the purple light of thunder rampaged. While it was already much weaker than before, it was still extremely violent. A purple bow landed on the ground. It was precisely the high-grade spirit artifact, Heaven Shocker. Currently, it was widely known in the Eight Extremities world that the two best treasured bows were the Sun-Shooting Bow of the Sacred Sun Clan and the Heaven Shocker of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Before the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoga had still been looking for treasured bows, with Ahu having been rather interested in the Sun-Shooting Bow and Heaven Shocker. Sadly, they had been hard to obtain. Now, however, the Heaven Shocker was right in front of him. Yen Zhaoga stroked his lower chin. This gain is even more of a pleasant surprise. Imitating him, Ahu also stroked his lower chin. Young master, this really is an unexpected gain. However, a high-grade spirit artifact, how do we collect it? Chapter 351. In the current Eight Extremities world, sacred artifacts were limited and hard to come by, with high-grade spirit artifacts being the peak weapons. Although they weren't as rare as saint weapons, high-grade spirit weapons were still extremely rare and expensive. At the same time, corresponding to their rarity, the power and spirituality of high-grade spiritual weapons far surpassed mid-grade spiritual weapons. Currently, the Eight Extremities world did not have any Bao-type sacred artifacts. Therefore, the high-grade spirit artifact, Heaven Shocker, was the best Bao. Other than the Sun-Shooting Bow, there were no similar weapons that could match it. Even if it didn't have an owner, it wouldn't be easy to collect it. Previously, Lin Zhou had only barely been able to wield Heaven Shocker with the help of the Heavenly Thunder Hall's seniors. Furthermore, Shocker was not in a calm state at the moment. Instead, it was extremely violent. While the feeling it gave off was not as terrifying as that of an Essence Talisman, Martial Grandmaster, it was still enough to shake one's soul. Ahu knew that his young master had once successfully pacified and subdued other people's spiritual weapons with his outer invulnerability Grandmaster cultivation. However, there had most likely been other spirit artifacts helping Yen Zhaoga to temporarily suppress and restrict the target at that time. Thus, Yen Zhaoga had succeeded in a single stroke. Even so, it was still something that made many people's eyes pop out of their sockets. Whose admiration for his young master was like the endless river water. However, right now, there wasn't another high-grade spirit weapon to help restrain the Sky Shocker. It was no wonder that even the usually bold, who was a little uncertain. Hearing Ahu's question, Yen Zhaoga smiled slightly. It's not difficult. The Eye of the Thunder Emperor fragment was dormant. The pillar of the Divine Palace was suppressing the true dragon's body, and the earth-devouring burner could not be activated. Still, even without the assistance of these treasures, Yen Zhaoga's current cultivation base was already far from what it had been in the past. Nearing the rampaging purple light of thunder, the massive chi within Yen Zhaoga's body that resembled chaos fluctuated, gradually transforming into thunderbolts. Numerous arcs of electricity surged from the various acupoints of Yen Zhaoga's entire body before leaping about within the air. This was not something that could be merged with just thunder and lightning. Just as Yen Zhaoga neared Heaven Shocker, the pure, refined chis of thunderbolts collided, crackling explosively resounding as they appeared even more shocking to the core. However, very quickly, Yen Zhaoga unceasingly adjusted the movement of his aura chi of thunder and lightning, gradually resonating with the masterless Heaven Shocker. Afterwards, Yen Zhaoga successfully arrived by the side of Heaven Shocker before reaching out and grabbing this high-grade artifact. The longbow suddenly vibrated, and the bowstring buzzed as if thunder was exploding between heaven and earth. Yen Zhaoga gripped Heaven Shocker with both hands, his 10 fingers jumping together as they struck rhythmically, seeming to contain some unique rhythm. Gradually, the unusual movements of Skyshocker began to stop, and its irritation began to subside, recovering from its uncontrollable state. When Ahu saw this scene, he clicked his tongue in wonder. "Young master, this move of yours is really amazing." Yen Zhaoge let out a long breath, grasping the bowstring before pulling it back forcefully. Although no arrow was nocked, a powerful and surging explosive force immediately manifested. Yen Zhaoge abruptly loosened his grip, the bowstring shuddering as a thunderstorm seemed to have been triggered on the spot. His hands did not cease as Yen Zhaoge consecutively drew 3 bows, gradually merging his martial true intent with the concept of Heaven Shocker, grasping this treasured bow. After a while, Yen Zhaoge put down his hand, smiling. It is indeed much stronger than high speed. The difficulty of using it is also naturally much greater. At this moment, Heaven Shocker had already regained its calm. Its aura retracted, the flickering purple light of thunder also gradually vanishing, its entire body having calmed down. Keeping this bow, Yen Zhaoge said to Ahu, "Let's go. Having achieved all our objectives, there is no longer a need to continue playing with those of the Heavenly Thunder Hall here." In coming to the extreme northern snowy plains this time, Yen Zhaoge had 3 main objectives. Firstly, to seek a way to treat Shijun and Inyujin. Secondly, to confirm his guess on the relationship between the 2 extremities of the Ice Pith Vein and the Fire Pith Vein, thereby influencing the Ice Pith Vein to touch the underground palace in the distant southern fire domain, giving the Sacred Sun Clan a huge gift. Thirdly, to see if there was anything of value left behind in the legacy site of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint. Now that all 3 objectives had been achieved, or even exceeded, with an unexpected, pleasant surprise having been obtained, there was naturally no longer a need to remain here. Yen Zhaoge immediately brought Ahu along, leaving the extreme northern snowy plains. However, Yen Zhaoge did not head west, instead going in the opposite direction, heading east. The Heavenly Thunder Hall had infiltrated the eastern part of the extreme northern snowy plains more, while the western part had been affected by the power of Infinite Boundless Mountain. While heading west would allow them to return to Broad Creed Mountain in the Heaven Domain via the Mountain Domain, with the Heavenly Thunder Hall having suffered heavy losses this time, wanting to target Yen Zhaoge, surrounding and obstructing him, they would definitely be guarding against him heading west. Like this, they might as well just return the way they had come, heading east, leaving via the sea once more. Of course, heading east towards the North Sea, there would definitely be Heavenly Thunder Hall martial practitioners setting up defenses to obstruct them. However, they would also have to face the pressure of Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City being hard-pressed to send out too many experts. Yen Zhaoge and Ahu were careful along the way, also having no major problems as they returned to the North Sea. The reason they headed east, re-entering the North Sea, was also because along the way, Yen Zhaoge had unceasingly attempted to piece together those shattered dragon scales. These dragon scales had come from the old residence of the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint. After carefully analyzing them, Yen Zhaoge discovered that the Glacial Dragon Martial Saint's whereabouts had previously been unknown, possibly having obtained some information from those dragon scales. Therefore, he had headed to the Great Sea, seeking some secrets. Yen Zhaoge was very interested in what exactly was hidden within. The myriad stars converge, the dragons enter the sea, the ancient, cold abyss, the reverse scale shocks the moon. Standing by the North Sea, Yen Zhaoge took out the underground splitting shuttle that had been repaired by the internal crystal furnace, bringing Ahu along as he entered the sea. Once more, these shattered dragon scales might be related to this. Sadly, it is not just a simple jigsaw puzzle of fragments. Wanting to repair them would require quite a bit of time and effort. Yen Zhaoga sat in the meditative position, his hands crossed before his chest, lowering his head to look at the dragon scales that had been pieced together, yet were still dim and lusterless, damaged and dim. Shaking his head slightly, keeping these things that had to be slowly analyzed and could not be accomplished in a single go, Yen Zhaoga smiled. Let's first have something that can show immediate results. The underground splitting shuttle floated to the surface of the sea, Yen Zhaoga emerging from within, opening his shadow-shrinking pouch. From within the shadow-shrinking pouch, two massive pillars flew out. One was a stone pillar of the Divine Palace, while the other was an ice pillar from the old residence of the glacial dragon martial saint, the corpse of a true dragon sealed within. Ahu looked eagerly at the true dragon's corpse. "Young master, how do we deal with this thing?" Yen Zhaoga smiled. If we deal with it reasonably, it would not just be a personal gain. It would also allow the entire clan to rise a level. While it cannot compare to a sacred artifact or a martial saint, it is the body of a dragon after all. The value contained within is not just a little bit. However, this does not contradict with us benefiting from it. Saying thus, Yen Zhaoga tapped out with a finger, a round hole melting out of the ice pillar that sealed the true dragon's corpse. To be continued. Chapter 352. Yen Zhaoga's control over his aura chi was extremely precise as he opened a fist-sized hole on the ice pillar, not damaging the surrounding ice in the slightest. However, from that hole, an extremely powerful chi and blood immediately emanated from within. When praising a martial practitioner for having a strong chi and blood and a shocking physique, one would sometimes use the phrase chi and blood majestic, resembling a dragon, resembling an elephant. And what lay before Yen Zhaoga and Ahu at this moment was a true dragon, while it had long since died, with only its corpse remaining. That vigorous chi and blood still emanated, shocking the surrounding area. Yen Zhaoga and Ahu seemed as though they were facing a powerful, living life form. It could be imagined how shocking its aura must have been when it had been alive. However, while it was only a small hole, the sealing effect of the ice pillar instantly had a loophole, its effectiveness plummeting. The scales of the dragon's body within the layer of ice actually seemed to move in unison. Already dead, this dragon would not come back to life. However, the spirituality contained within had not dissipated for a long time, still unwilling to be bound. Yen Zhaoga had long since been prepared for this. As the pillar of the Divine Palace suppressed down once more, the true dragon's body regained its calm once more. Through the hole, white dragon scales that flickered with a faint golden radiance could be seen, emitting layers of white chi. This was an ice dragon. While it was dead, cold chi was still emanating from its body, unceasingly piercing to the bone. Yen Zhaoga extended his index finger, aura chi condensing at his fingertip, gradually transforming into a streak of light which extended within the hole, resembling a long, thin sword of light. The sword of light extended unceasingly, coming into contact with the corpse of the ice dragon. Ahu looked curiously at Yen Zhaoga. Even though it was already a corpse, the sturdiness of a dragon's body was still indisputable, especially since this was a complete corpse of an ice dragon. There were no wounds or openings on its exterior, as it was a complete and flawless body. Under such circumstances, wanting to break through the defenses of the dragon scales with external force would undoubtedly be an extremely difficult thing. The defensive power of dragon scales was not to be trifled with. Ahu felt that even with a sharp, low-grade spirit artifact in hand, he would not be able to break through the skin and flesh of this dragon's body. However, Yen Zhaoga often did things that others could not, causing Ahu to still have confidence in his young master. Yen Zhaoga focused, the sword of light at his fingertips unceasingly extending forward until it came into contact with the corpse of the ice dragon. He did not use the light sword to brutally attack the dragon's body. The moment the light sword came into contact with the dragon's scales, it softened and seeped into the dragon's body like water. The luster attached to the ice dragon's corpse and circulated continuously. As if stimulated, the dragon's body, which had already calmed down under the suppression of the divine palace's pillars, began to tremble again. Gazing at all this, Yen Zhaoge's extended index finger trembled unceasingly with a unique, yet strange rhythm. As his index finger trembled, the stream of light extending from his fingertip also trembled continuously, attempting to fuse with the aura of the ice dragon's remains. Gradually, the radiance of the stream of light at Yen Zhaoge's fingertip dimmed, becoming no longer so dazzling, instead appearing blurry and indistinct, completely chaotic. Following this change, the ice dragon's slew gradually became quiet again. In the stream of light, one could vaguely see a faint ice-blue liquid seeping out of the dragon scales and merging into the stream of light. A blazing hot qi and blood emanated, but it caused Yen Zhaoge and Ahu to feel a bone-piercing cold. This originally extremely contradictory phenomenon appeared at this moment, yet it did not seem too sudden at all. Yen Zhaoge and Ahu both had expressions on their faces as if this was only natural. Looking at that ice-blue blood that had merged into the stream of light, Ahu was slightly dazed as he opened his mouth wide. "Young master, this is dragon's blood." "Ah, pure dragon's blood. This is still the first time I've seen it in my life." While the ice dragon had already been dead for who knew how many years, its flesh and blood had still not decayed, still containing a flourishing spiritual qi within. As Ahu had said, true dragons could not be seen in the current 8 extremities world, only scaly dragons and hornless dragons at most. Even if they could find the corpse of a true dragon, it would only be its skeleton at most, with many of its skeletons not even being incomplete. Therefore, such pure dragon blood was truly rare to the extreme. Other than the founder of the Water Domain's Jade Sea City, who had once obtained a complete corpse of a water dragon, the others at most only had great fortune filling the heavens, having discovered containers containing a small amount of dragon blood left behind in the remains of some pre-great calamity times. However, such good fortune was truly as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Under the heavens, most people, even many martial grandmasters and martial saints included, might not even have personally seen true dragon blood in their entire lives. Through the stream of light that extended out from his fingertip, Yen Zhaoge guided the dragon blood out. As the ice-blue blood came into contact with Yen Zhaoge's finger also involuntarily trembled slightly, feeling an icy coldness as his fingertip momentarily went numb. Yen Zhaoge sucked in a deep breath, his face gradually turning red. After a short while, a layer of green qi vaguely emanated, the two colors alternating unceasingly, circulating endlessly. The mass of qi within his body that resembled chaos now changed its form, separating into ice and fire, intermingling whilst also opposing each other. With this as the foundation, it opposed the icy cold yet blazing hot dragon blood. The ice-blue blood extended unceasingly, beginning to envelop Yen Zhaoge's finger before continuing to extend upwards, rolling on Yen Zhaoge's palm and even his arm. The acupoints of Yen Zhaoge's body pulsed, resembling breathing as they unceasingly absorbed the dragon blood within his body, transforming it into refined qi, which he then refined and absorbed. Above his head, a roiling pillar of qi surged, condensed, and not dissipating as it resembled smoke. Ahu stood guard by Yen Zhaoge's side, at the same time vigilantly paying attention to the surrounding situation. After a long time, Yen Zhaoge ceased his cultivation, the steam that seemed to boil above his head gradually dissipating as the alternating red and green color on his face also faded, his entire person regaining his original appearance. Within his eyes, a radiance was bright as it had never been before, but it was gone in a flash, very quickly becoming gentle, once more, also even more restrained than before. The only abnormal thing was that Yen Zhaoge's hand was still flickering with a faint blue light at this moment. Ahu looked at Yen Zhaoge. "Young master, your hand?" Yen Zhaoge laughed. "It's fine. The essence of the dragon blood still hasn't been completely refined. Some time is needed, that's all. Other than the external appearance, it doesn't affect anything else. You come and try it too." Saying thus, Yen Zhaoge continued extracting the essence of the dragon blood from the corpse of the ice dragon, not refining it himself, instead transferring it to Ahu. Ahu clicked his tongue in wonder, not changing his carefree nature, as he began attempting to refine the essence of the dragon blood after absorbing it. In the end, he had taken too big a step, the martial arts he cultivated in also not being as all-encompassing as Yen Zhaoge's peerless heavenly scripture. In the end, Ahu's entire body was enveloped by the dragon blood, illuminated by a blue light. Although he had gradually refined and absorbed most of the essence of the dragon blood, not causing any other negative effects, Ahu was still directly stunned. Looking at him, the corners of Yen Zhaoge's mouth twitched slightly. Luckily, it's not green. Chapter 353. In the following days, Yen Zhaoge and Ahu traveled on a vessel traversing the North Sea. On the way, Yen Zhaoge analyzed the dragon scale fragments left behind by the glacial dragon martial saint whilst also extracting the dragon blood contained within the corpse of the glacial dragon, tempering his body and absorbing the essence of spiritual qi within. Body tempering with the dragon blood caused Yen Zhaoge's fleshly body to grow unceasingly from the inside out, stepping into a new level. And along with the absorption of the dragon blood's essence and spiritual qi, Yen Zhaoge's oroqi cultivation also rose unceasingly. Because of this heaven-blessed fortuitous encounter and resources, Yen Zhaoge's accumulation was even more robust, also saving quite a bit of time in his cultivation. Before leaving the mountain this time, having just nurtured a spirit seed and stepped into the mid-spirit vessel martial grandmaster realm, Yen Zhaoge could clearly feel his rate of improvement being even faster than he had expected. Not just compared to others, it was even faster than Yen Zhaoge himself had predicted. Yen Zhaoge could vaguely feel that he was already not far from his spirit seed sprouting and forming spirit sprouts, stepping into the late spirit vessel martial grandmaster realm. This was something that he had not thought of before coming to the extreme north this time. After all, not many people knew that the old residence of the glacial dragon martial saint actually still contained the corpse of a true dragon. As Yen Zhaoge hurried, he cultivated, carefully avoiding the dangers of the sea as well as the heavenly thunder hall's spies. A considerable portion of the inner North Sea was under the control of the heavenly thunder hall, and Yen Zhaoge was currently not in the mood to waste time on them. As he sailed into one of the water domain's 9 cities, Stone City, at the southern end of the inner North Sea, Yen Zhaoge could be considered as having left the territory of the heavenly thunder hall. Stone Rock City, one of the 9 cities of the water domain, was also governed by the water domain's sacred ground, Jade Sea City. Here, there was the first seat elder of Jade Sea City, as well as some first and second-rate powers in the water domain and the inner North Sea. They had always been infiltrating the inner North Sea, controlled by the heavenly thunder hall, the two sides having conflicts from time to time, the smoke of gunpowder rising unceasingly. Jade Sea City had previously received news that Yen Zhaoge had headed to the outer East Sea, his whereabouts thereafter unknown. Now, however, news of Yen Zhaoge causing a great disturbance in the extreme northern lands had vaguely spread. Therefore, Yen Zhaoge had not concealed his tracks in coming here. While he was young, his status and identity far surpassed that of martial practitioners of the same cultivation level. Stepping into the territory of their ally, Jade Sea City, he had to inform the other party of his arrival. Otherwise, it would appear rather impolite. In some aspects, Yen Zhaoga's current authority and responsibility in Broad Creed Mountain was even more important than that of some of the first seed elders. If possible, Yen Zhaoga had originally not intended to enter Stone Rock City. However, navigating above the North Sea, Yen Zhaoga felt that little Shi Jun within the ice coffin showed signs of awakening. In order to ensure that nothing unexpected happened, he had to make some preparations, involving some things. He might as well trouble the Jade Sea City martial practitioners of Stone Rock City to help him gather them. Ascending the massive island that resembled a small continent where Stone Rock City was, the number of martial practitioners walking about gradually increased. Yen Zhaoga was still garbed in a white robe, a blue robe on the outside with a black border around it. He didn't intentionally display it, but also didn't conceal his tracks as he just walked openly on the road. However, the gazes of the passers-by were more focused on who behind Yen Zhaoga. Yen Zhaoga didn't mind this in the slightest. He really didn't mind it at all. Yen Zhaoga was completely not interested in trying whose method of stealing his limelight himself. Along the way, Hu and Yen Zhaoga had unceasingly absorbed the essence of the dragon's blood, tempering their fleshly bodies and increasing their cultivation bases. However, as compared to the Yen Zhaoga, whose external appearance was still normal, Ahu's skin was currently a deep blue, even flickering with a faint blue light. His 5 senses, nose, neck, arms, all parts of his body that were exposed outside his clothes were all like this. With such an appearance, it would be hard for Ahu not to be eye-catching even if he wanted to. "What are you looking at?" Ahu glared unhappily at the passers-by by the side. Currently, he was truly ferocious, his features savage. However, Ahu then turned to look at Yen Zhaoga with a bitter expression on his face, saying pitifully, "Young master." Yen Zhaoga also couldn't help but laugh. "I already told you long ago that if you take too big a step, you'll easily pull your balls, but you just wouldn't listen. Why bother now?" Ahu was crestfallen, thinking of a way to get himself a cloak, wrapping his entire body within it before pulling up a hood to cover his face. Only then did he avoid being stared at by others. After entering Stone Rock City, Yen Zhaoga paid a visit to the first seat elder of Jade Sea City. Having already received the news earlier, Jade Sea City naturally had prepared a place for Yen Zhaoga and Ahu to stay. The materials and treasures that Yen Zhaoga had asked them to help him find had also mostly been prepared. In the following days, Yen Zhaoga quietly guarded the ice coffin containing Shi Jun's body. At the same time, after Yen Zhaoga had entered the region of sea governed by Stone Rock City, his communication with the outside world had also become smoother. Stone Rock City was the territory of Jade Sea City. After all, Jade Sea City and Broad Creed Mountain were allies, unlike the territory of the Heavenly Thunder Hall. If Broad Creed Mountain wanted to set up a simple information channel here, it wouldn't be difficult. News from the outside world began to be transmitted to Yen Zhaoga in an endless stream after the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain, while Yen Zhaoga, with his current age and cultivation base, had already reached the point where there was virtually no reward for him at all. However, compared to before, it was still much more convenient. Other than being able to freely enter any level of the martial repository, Yen Zhaoga would also be able to obtain all the information that Broad Creed Mountain had gathered from the outside world at the first possible moment. At the same time, Yen Zhaoga could specially designate the various information channels of Broad Creed Mountain, gathering information according to his needs and train of thought. This authority was the same as that of his father, the chief of Broad Creed Mountain. It could be said that Yen Zhaoga's authority and treatment in certain areas even surpassed that of the first seed elders. This was an important manifestation of this. Yen Zhaoga had previously instructed them to pay close attention to the movements of the southern underground palace of the Fire Domain, not letting go of even the slightest sign of trouble, Currently, a large amount of information had already been sent back. The Southern Underground Palace was an important place of the sacred Sun Clan. For Broad Creed Mountain to want to gather information from there, it would be extremely difficult. However, just some very superficial, very trivial information was already sufficient for Yen Zhaoga to be able to see through it. It had already been some time since he had touched the ice pith vein in the extreme northern snowy plains. Imperceptibly, accumulating little by little, some abnormalities had indeed occurred in the Southern Underground Palace over the past few days. News showed that the Southern Underground Palace was growing more and more violent. Some Sacred Sun Clan martial practitioners, because of the sudden increase in firepower exceeding the limits of their cultivation bases, were caught unawares and nearly perished within. It was all thanks to the Sacred Sun Clan experts with higher cultivation bases discovering the abnormalities in time, lending a helping hand that a terrible disaster had not occurred. But very quickly, these Sacred Sun Clan experts with higher cultivation bases discovered to their shock that they too were gradually unable to bear it. What left the Sacred Sun Clan even more confused was that as time passed, not only did the eruption of the Sea of Flames not weaken, it instead grew more and more intense. To be continued. Chapter 354. As Yen Zhaoga began to leave the extreme northern snowy plains and re-enter the North Sea, far away in the southern region of the fire domain, the situation had gradually become unstable. In the south of the fire field, there were hundreds of thousands of mountains in the southern border. The mountains stretched endlessly, and the weather was already hot. And in the mountains leading underground was an even hotter world. There, beneath the earth, was a world of flames and magma. The Southern Wasteland's underground palace was an extremely dangerous place, just like the extreme north ice field and the extreme west desert. Moreover, the danger it posed was even more obvious. It was even more tyrannical. It was truly an underground world of a sea of fire. Even for the Sacred Sun Clan, while this was a sacred ground, it was also a forbidden ground. Only martial artists whose cultivation reached the great Grandmaster realm could enter with the sect's permission. Although the environment here was extremely harsh, it also produced some rare resources and treasures, many of which were unique to this place. At the same time, to the Sacred Sun Clan martial practitioners, this was also a good place to cultivate and temper themselves. However, in the past few days, the Southern Wasteland Fire Sea Underground Palace had become even more violent than before. At the start, while the Sacred Sun Clan martial practitioners with lower cultivation bases had been caught unawares and nearly perished within, the Sacred Sun Clan had not paid too much attention to it. Although it wasn't as obvious and stable as the ebb and flow of the ocean, the fire in the underground palace of the Southern Wasteland had also fluctuated from time to time in previous years. It was just that what the Sacred Sun Clan was concerned about was that this time's firepower had suddenly skyrocketed without any prior warning whatsoever, leaving them completely unprepared. If that was all, then it would be fine. However, what happened next caused the Sacred Sun Clan to be unable to remain calm. The energy within the Sea of Flames grew more and more violent. That destructive energy seemed to want to destroy anyone who dared to step into it. As time passed, it was not just the Essence Spirit Martial Grandmasters and Spirit Vessel Martial Grandmasters who were unable to withstand it. Towards the end, even the Essence Talisman Martial Grandmasters were gradually finding it hard to withstand it. In order to extract some of the special resources of the underground palace, the Sacred Sun Clan had set up some equipment, formations, and other things, opening up a few safe zones, all of them having been destroyed, not a single tile remaining. In the end, a Supreme Elder who had already reached the Transcendent Realm and had long stopped caring about worldly affairs, who had secluded himself in the Southern Wasteland Underground Palace for many years, was also alarmed. This peak martial grandmaster expert, a longtime elder of the Sacred Sun clan, who had already stepped into the transcending mortality stage and was attempting a breakthrough into the martial saint realm, gradually felt the strength of the firepower of the underground palace to the point that it was hard for him to bear. Finally, he could only retreat from the underground palace in a sorry state. The southern underground palace was extremely important to the Sacred Sun clan. This matter directly alarmed the Sacred Sun clan's current #1 expert. The sun comes east, Huang Guanglia. Huang Guanglia, a martial saint, personally went to the southern wasteland underground palace to investigate. However, the result caused the East Rising martial saint to feel extremely despondent. There were no signs of external enemies invading, no signs of internal chaos. Also no signs of the Sacred Sun clan's own disciples making a mistake, causing the southern underground palace to explode. All of this seemed to have happened without any prior signs, without any reason at all, causing everyone to be unable to make heads or tails of it. It was as though the heavens had gone mad, suddenly giving the Sacred Sun clan a hard time. This caused the entire Sacred Sun clan to feel stifled, filled with nervousness and fury, unable to find a place to vent them. It was like sitting peacefully in one's home, yet an unexpected calamity had flown over. Yan Zhaoga's sudden blow from the other end of the Eight Extremities world caused the entire Sacred Sun clan to feel somewhat dazed for a time. As time passed, the southern underground palace became extremely violent, the infinite flames and lava beneath the ground gradually about to burst out of the earth's surface. Of the entire Sacred Sun clan, only Huang Guanglia was currently still able to move about within the underground palace. His domineering move had at least not caused the danger to grow a step further. However, he could only barely stop the rising flames within the underground palace. If he wanted to quell the rampaging power within the underground palace, he could only rely on time to slowly whittle it away. When Yan Zhaoga arrived at Stone Rock City, a group of the Sacred Sun clan's peak experts were gathered outside the southern underground palace. From the current chief Huang Su to Huang Guanglia's grandson, and Huang Su's son Huang Jia, everyone was present. They all had solemn expressions on their faces as they stared at the entrance of the underground palace, where numerous fiery lights could now clearly be seen flickering within, flames spurting out from the entrance from time to time, shooting into the skies. After a long time, a white-clothed old man resembling the sun, rising from the east, walked out of the sea of flames. It was precisely Huang Guanglia. Huang Su, Huang Jia, and the others all came forward together, bowing to Huang Guanglia. Huang Guanglia's face was expressionless. The cause was a sudden change in the fire pith vein, thus causing all of this. If we want to recover, we can only slowly whittle it away with time. At the very least, it will take more than 10 years, perhaps even decades. Hearing his words, the faces of everyone in the Sacred Sun clan darkened, bitterness filling their mouths. Huang Guanglia's gaze swept the entire area. Unless we can find the cause of this matter and find a cure for it. Such a sudden change. This old man does not believe that it was a sudden calamity descending from the heavens. There must definitely be a reason for it. If there is nothing wrong with the body itself, it must be caused by external factors. Huang Guanglia looked at Huang Su. Has there been any news in the outside world that is worth noting recently? Huang Su said. There is one thing that perhaps is worth noting, just that it is a little too inconceivable. There was news earlier that Broad Creed Mountains, Yan Zhaoga caused a great disturbance in the extreme northern snowy plains, clashing with the Heavenly Thunder Hall and killing a few of them, snatching away their high-grade spirit artifact. Heaven shocker. At the same time, he also entered the legacy site of the past glacial dragon martial saint. What he took away from there is still uncertain. We have long since known of this news, but we missed out on some details earlier. This time, having specially asked those of the Heavenly Thunder Hall to verify it. Only then did we know that the trap Yen Zhaoge used to ambush and kill many of them activated a branch of the ice pith vein of the extreme northern lands. Huang Su knit his brows slightly. They are all earth veins. While one is south and one is north, one is ice and one is fire, there still seems to be some mysteries within. The surrounding higher echelon experts of the Sacred Sun clan all fell into deep thought. Even so, isn't the distance a little too far? Does it really matter? Huang Jia, who had always been silent and resembled Huang Su's shadow, now said softly, "There is a matter that was passed down from before the great calamity, now like a legend. The martial titan of the snowy immortal palace had a heavenly frost ice spring, which dried up without any prior warning or reason, leaving everyone at that time completely bewildered as it became an unsolved mystery." Huang Jia said, "While one is strengthening, the other is weakening. The experience of the heavenly frost ice spring is not similar to the situation in the southern underground palace today." Huang Guanglie raised his head towards the sky, saying after a while, "Ice and fire complementing each other, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other, two extremes opposing each other. It is not impossible." Looking at the incomparably vast southern underground palace beneath the ground before them, an old man said rather hesitantly, "If Yuan Zhongfeng went to do it, it would still be fine. That Yen Zhaoge, with his early martial grandmaster cultivation base, was able to draw upon the earth vein. Also, it was the opposition of ice and fire, influencing the southern underground palace from the extreme northern lands." The other Sacred Sun clan martial practitioners all nodded slightly. The three generations of Huang Guanglie, Huang Su, and Huang Jia all had solemn looks on their faces, as they felt that it was absurd and hard to believe. To be continued.